GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me on today's show, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza. But before we get started, let's get your latest news.
Nana, thank you very much. Good afternoon from the GB newsroom. It's 3 o'clock. The headlines. Well, Norfolk Police has referred itself to the police watchdog over a 999 call that was made about an hour before 4 people were found dead on Friday. The bodies of a 45-year-old man and a 36-year-old woman and 2 girls were discovered at a property in Norfolk after officers forced their way into the house. The man and 2 children are understood to have lived at the address, but police say the woman was just visiting. All 4 of them were found with injuries. Churches in the area have now opened their doors so people can pay tributes. Well, in the last few minutes, the Shadow Foreign Secretary was interrupted by multiple protesters during a speech in London. David Lammy had to dash backstage after the first protester jumped onto the stage holding a Palestinian flag. That woman then called for him to condemn genocide in Gaza. She was shouting, "How many more children need to die?" Mr. Lammy said that everyone wants to see a sustainable ceasefire in Gaza. His speech was then interrupted again by others who continued shouting. Mr. Lammy was later able to finish his speech, saying he wants to see change through power, not protest. The US president has suggested there may be a path to peace between Israel and Palestine. Joe Biden spoke to Israel's Prime Minister on Friday. Benjamin Netanyahu has in the past rejected calls for a 2-state solution. But following those discussions yesterday, President Biden now says Mr. Netanyahu is not opposed to all versions of the proposal, suggesting one path could involve a non-militarised government. Back here in the UK, senior members of the Labour Party say that Britain should consider rejoining the European Customs Union. The trade alliance is a key pillar of the European Union and allows for the free movement of goods. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, said this morning that rejoining should be on the table when the Brexit deal comes up for review later this year. Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary Hilary Benn struck a similar tone. He says Europe would breathe a sigh of relief if Labour wins the general election that's due later this year. Well, as we've been hearing in the last few hours, Tata Steel has now pledged a £130 million support package to help workers retrain or find new jobs. That's as it plans to close furnaces at its Port Talbot site. Up to 2,800 jobs will be affected over the next 18 months as the country transitions to what it calls a greener way of working. However, unions are now warning that the move will be devastating for the economy and the steel industry. 21 public bodies, including the Bank of England, have been asked to reveal details of any contracts given to Fujitsu after the Post Office scandal. MPs want to know how much taxpayers' money has been spent with the tech firm since the High Court ruled that prosecutions based on its flawed Horizon IT system were wrong. Fujitsu has been awarded almost 200 public sector contracts since 2012. Those are worth a combined total of £6.8 billion. The mother of a teenager who was stabbed to death is appealing for information as a £20,000 reward is offered. 19-year-old Eddie King Muthemba Kinuthai suffered multiple stab wounds when he was attacked in a park known as Grosvenor Road Triangle in Bristol. That was on the 21st of July last year. A total of 6 men have been arrested by Avon and Somerset police on suspicion of murder. 3 remain on bail and the others have been released without charge. Police, though, are now appealing for anyone with information to contact them. In royal news, Prince Harry is facing an expensive legal bill. That's after he withdrew his libel case against the publishers of the Mail on Sunday. The Duke of Sussex says he wants to focus on the safety of his family and his legal action against the Home Office. He was suing the newspaper over an article about his publicly funded security arrangements when he and his family visit the UK. And a European spacecraft has now arrived at the International Space Station with crew members from Italy, Turkey and Sweden. They docked about 37 hours after taking off from NASA's Space Center in Florida. During their time on board the Axiom Mission 3 craft, the 4-person crew will carry out more than 30 scientific experiments. They're now currently orbiting the globe at hypersonic speed. That's about 17,500 miles an hour. And slightly slower than that, a 6-legged dog who was found abandoned in a car park has had her extra limbs removed. Ariel, a spaniel puppy, was found in Pembroke. Raising appeal, her surplus limbs were safely removed. The dog's now been taken in by the Green Acres Rescue Charity and is being cared for by a very lucky foster family. That's the latest from the GB newsroom for now. Aaron Armstrong will be with you at the top of the hour. In the meantime, for more, we're on TV, digital radio and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Thank you, Sam. It's fast approaching 7 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, coming up, our royal correspondent Cameron Walker will have the latest on Prince Harry dropping even. Who's been writing this? Honestly, it's not somebody's on something right in that. Dropping his libel case against the Mail on Sunday. We'll also be going to live to Tel Aviv to speak to star Uri Geller on the update on what's happening in Israel. Then stay tuned at 3:20. It's Climate Control, where after Tata Steel confirms its closures will impact 2,800 jobs. I'm asking, is net zero is killing the UK economy? Then stay tuned at 3:35. Professor Carol Sokora will be live to discuss the King's health and the treatment. Of course, he went public with regard to his enlarged prostate. And we'll also be discussing the measles epidemic that appears to be potentially gripping this country. And James Mathewson is in the political spotlight this week as he shines a light on the work and life as top of the Labour Party politics. That's coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at gbnews. But first, let's kick things off with Prince Harry. I mean, this is It's sad, it's slightly comedic, but why on earth? But now he's withdrawn his libel case against the Mail on Sunday. Now, this comes on the day that he was due to hand over relevant documents. Seems a little bit convenient. He needed to hand some important documents, and somehow he's suddenly stopped it all. But his lawyers have now filed a notice of discontinuance. He was trying to sue the Mail on Sunday for its reporting of his dispute with the Home Office over his security arrangements. But joining me now to clear things up, to make it, because he's got things going on, GB News is royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Now, Cameron, what on earth is this man doing?
Yeah, it's been a pretty difficult 24 hours for Prince Harry, because not only has he dropped the libel case, he's also now facing a reported £750,000 legal bill, because he's going to have to pay Associated Newspapers' legal costs as well as his own. Now, I spoke to Prince Harry's spokesperson yesterday, and they were saying that it's a bit premature to put a number on it, that 750 grand figure. But they definitely didn't dispute that it's going to be a lot of money. They say his priority is the safety of his family and his case against the Home Office, because all of this is about an article written by the Mail on Sunday about his separate case against the Home Office. They allege that Prince Harry was trying to spin the narrative to make himself look good and perhaps manipulate the British public. Prince Harry said that was an attack on his honesty and integrity, and then sued them.า on Sunday saying it's honest opinion.
Well, that ship has sailed. On his honesty and integrity. I mean, look, his grandfather was dying, and they came out on Oprah doing this talk. I mean, if anything, that tells you all you need to know. Then there was the whole thing about racism within the royal family, and then he came out on Tom Bradbury's show to say no one in the family is racist. I mean, why did he not say anything? If he's worried about an attack on his safety, why on earth would he talk about his kill count in Afghanistan? All of this sounds nonsense.
Yeah, well, the crunch point was yesterday, where he had to submit, as you said in your introduction there, legal documents, and so did the Mail on Sunday, to the judge to form part of the trial. He decided not to do so, and he has decided to drop the case altogether. Now, there's a few reasons we can speculate as to why he's done that. Either he thinks he's not going to win the case, or he didn't want certain parts of those documents made public, because, of course, if it goes to court, all of us can read about it, or he wanted to prioritise something else, i.e. the finance to perhaps pursue his case against the Home Office and keep his family safe. I suspect that's probably the argument he's going to go down. But he's kind of lost this battle, really, hasn't he? Because he's not suing the Associated Newspapers for libel anymore. But the war's not over, because he still has two cases against British newspaper groups, the publisher of The Sun and the publisher of The Mail, for alleged unlawful information gathering, which they totally deny, and, of course, his case against the British government, the Home Office, over security.
Harry, take your money and your wife and your kids and enjoy your life. What is wrong with this man?
He then got an award yesterday for... have you seen the Aviation Award, Nana?
Was that Sylvester Stallone, the one that Sly Stallone gave him?
Well, it was John Travolta gave it to him. Yeah,
I was too confused.
Yeah, John Travolta gave it to him. So reportedly, John Travolta pushed for Prince Harry to win this, not legacy. I can't remember the name of it now. Living Legends of Aviation Award in Los Angeles. He got given the medal. Of course, he famously danced with Princess Diana in the White House in the 1980s. John Travolta. Some people are upset about this because, yes, Prince Harry served 2 tours of Afghanistan. He was a co-pilot gunner on helicopters in Afghanistan on training missions, but so were several other soldiers who have not been inducted into this Hall of Fame. But it's more of I would say it's more of a Hall of Fame that's got lots of celebrities in it. OK, we've got Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, but then we also have people like Tom Cruise. So I suspect he's in that calibre of celebrities and Hollywood types.
Yeah, that's not going to pay his legal bills, though, is it? It's all very nice, Harry, but it's not going to pay the bills. You might want to consider stopping all this legal action. Thank you very much, Cameron Walker. Lovely to talk to you. Right. Well, listen, let's move on, because the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has told the United States that he is opposed to the establishment of a Palestinian state once the war in Gaza ends. So Israel's allies, including the UK and the US, have long urged for the revival of a two-state solution, in which, including Kefir Bibas, who turned aged 1 in captivity, bless his heart. And all of this as well comes as guidance for museums shared by a taxpayer-funded charity in the UK. The Collections Trust has described Hamas as anti-colonial freedom fighters. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And in the last hour, Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy has been interrupted at a Fabian Society speech by pro-Palestinian fighters. So joining me to discuss all of that is Mr. Fire Uri Geller. Uri, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Well, I mean, there's a lot to unpack. Where do you want to start, Uri?
You know, you just mentioned, look, this is totally unbelievable, Nana, because a taxpayer-funded organization which advises British museums and art galleries has said, as you just mentioned, that Hamas should be described not as terrorists, but as anti-colonial freedom fighters. I mean, Nana, you couldn't make this up. Who wrote this? Who wrote this? Who signed it off? This charity is aligning itself with one of the most barbaric, anti-Semitic terrorist group in the world. And let me remind you that in the United Kingdom, it is illegal to support Hamas. So I hope that there is an investigation and that anyone responsible for this so-called guidance is immediately kicked out. It is shocking and it is disgusting. Now, you mentioned the baby. Nana, this has been a very sad week in Israel and around the world. And let me tell you why. This week, as you said, an Israeli baby called Kfir Bibas turned 1 year old. But baby Kfir has been held hostage by Hamas since October the 7th. He has spent, listen to this, he has spent a third of his life in captivity. It is so painful to even talk about this, Nana. Look, tell me, why doesn't Hamas, I'm asking you, I'm asking your viewers, why doesn't Hamas simply release the baby, release him, and the other 130 hostages, and bring this war to an end? Why don't they do that? Tell me your opinion, Nana.
Do you know, in my opinion, in my view, I don't think they want it to end. They have, in their covenant, said that they want to destroy all Jews, kill all Jews. Is that it very clearly, and that was their intention when they went on the 7th of October. They've also said they're going to do it again. So, in my opinion, I don't think they want to stop. If they stopped firing the bombs, in my view, and gave back the hostages, I'm thinking that Israel would stop. Am I not correct?
Absolutely. And look, let me go now to the Benjamin Netanyahu situation. I just want to show all your viewers, look, I was a paratrooper. I fought in the Six-Day War in Jerusalem. I know what war is. It's awful, it's shocking, terrible, lots of civilian casualties. Now, but meanwhile, this is, just listen to this. Meanwhile, there is another huge march taking over the streets of London today. Am I right? These are sympathizers of Hamas who are glad, listen, who are glad the 7th of October happened. What has happened to your country, Nana? What happened to your country?
Well, listen, Uri, some people on those marches might argue that they are actually worried about the death and, or, you know, lots of people dying, and, you know, that's what they're worried about. A lot of people really calling for peace. In fact, we had David Lammy, who's one of our parliamentarians, calling for a ceasefire. I want you to watch this. Have a listen. So that was a response to one of our politicians who was on stage at a Fabian Society event calling, I think he was calling for a ceasefire.
Look, the whole thing is so shocking what's happening, not only in Israel, but around the world. I mean, they're all firing ballistic missiles, the Houthis, anyhow. But let's go back now to Benjamin Netanyahu. I want to say something else about this, and this is very important because I want to help your viewers, Nana, understand something. There is an obsession with the idea that a two-state solution will solve everything. But let me tell you why this is so dangerous. Look, just imagine the West Bank and Gaza became a Palestinian state. Listen, it was only encourage the Palestinians to step up the fight to destroy Israel. It would be armed with tanks, with missiles, and an air force and it would be all backed by Iran. That's the head of the snake. Now, we saw that Hamas, we all saw what Hamas did on October the 7th, and Hamas would easily take over a Palestinian state. A two-state solution is not a recipe for peace. It is a recipe for war. The only solution to the conflict is to destroy Hamas and to have a direct negotiation with the Palestinian leadership, which accepts Israel, that Israel is here to stay. This is the only way to create a bright future for Israel and a bright future for the Palestinians. And both people deserve it.
Well, but that sounds like, so you're saying a one state where they all live together in harmony. You'd keep the West Bank and the settlers within the West Bank, and what Gaza would still be a mix of. How would you have that working?
Look, I have been living in Old Jaffa for 8 years now. I lived in England, Sonning-on-Thames, for 35 years. My children grew up in England. Daniel and Natalie went to British schools and so forth. I'm here, if you look out of the window, there are Arab Muslims there, and there are Arab Christians, and we live harmoniously. There's no problem. And it is, I believe that this is, you can solve this situation. I walk into an Arabic restaurant, they are so warm towards me. I'm warm towards them. This can be done, Nana, and I think we should focus first to destroy Hamas.
So you think destroy Hamas,
Absolutely.
unity, one state, Israel, Palestinians, everybody living together in harmony. Uri, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much for talking to us. It's a beautiful vision. I pray that it becomes that. Uri, take care. That's Uri Geller. He's Mystify. He's there live in Tel Aviv. Well, this is coming up to 20 minutes after 3 o'clock. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up after the news of King Charles's prostate check, I'll be with the leading health expert to talk about this, Dr. Sakura. But up next, it's time for Climate Control, where we discuss the debate around the climate. And on the agenda, Tata Steel confirms 2,800 jobs have been cut across the UK. We'll be discussing if net zero is destroying our economy. This is GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's 24 minutes after 3 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. It's time now for Climate Control, where we unpick the debate around the climate. And on the menu, Tata Steel giant has confirmed plans to close blast furnaces on its Port Talbot site. That's in South Wales. Now, this, of course, could lead to the loss of up to 2,800 jobs. The furnaces will transition to electric arc technology, which require fewer workers to maintain. But is this shift to cleaner, so-called cleaner energy and net zero, is it killing the UK economy? I'm joined by meteorologist Jim Dale and also social commentator Paul Burgess, who's a climate scientist. Paul, I'm going to start with you. Yeah. Talk to me about this then. Why are they doing this, and is this the right way to go?
It's so wrong, it's unbelievable. I come from this area. 2,800 people, that's 10,000 families, are going to be affected by this green madness. We have put up power prices, electricity prices, so much that our industries can't survive. This is a deindustrialisation on a massive scale. It really is. And it's being done in the name of this green nonsense about CO2. And let me just explain something. We're now going to have to, it doesn't make good quality steel. So it doesn't make steel for buildings or structural steel or for cars or anything. It just makes cheap, inferior steel now. So we have to import that from China then, do we? So now we have the extra CO2 of all the importing and giving the jobs to China. China must be laughing. And on top of that, currently in the world, and I've got a graph here, if I called up Paul 2, if they've
we see Paul 2 graph, if possible.
There we are. Now, all the renewables in the world, they're the sources of energy now in the world, total energy. All the renewables are just 2 to 3%.
So you've got a graph there, and it's got coal, oil and gas. And
yes,
like
and they dominate. And the other ones after that are hydro and nuclear.
Right.
Only in the top little bit, you can't really see them.
In the very top part of the graph.
The very top part, little part of the graph. Now, that is where the energy is coming from. So when people say, 25% of energy came, they're talking just about electric grid in the UK, etc. If you look at the UK, we take 5 to 6%. Between 5 and 6% is renewable at a huge cost. And they deceive people. Let me give you an example of that deception of the green thing. If you have a wind farm or a solar farm, we supply 10,000 houses. What do people think that means? I'll tell you what it means, because they say according to Ofgem, according to the average house. The average house is 20% electric, 80% gas. So what every single wind and solar farm in the UK means, every one of them, is we can supply 10,000 houses, providing 80% of the energy is coming from gas, right?
But they would argue that, to supply more houses, they would argue that would give off lots of CO2. So their aim is to get to net zero, but zero CO2, zero carbon, and that this is their route to do it.
Well, why don't they just tell the truth? We can supply 10,000 houses, providing 80% of the energy is coming from gas, and we need gas supply when we're not blowing, when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining. So we need 100% backup. So if we're going to build a wind farm in the North Sea, we've got to back it up 100% with the gas. There's no way out of that, by the way, and all the other storage techniques. And I've been involved with things like Norwic pump storage. I've been involved with that professionally family. All those don't even come near to it. On 9 days in 2018, without power, 7,200 gigawatt hours needed. We've got 9.1. We need 7,200. There is no storage solution can work. We are deindustrialising on a massive scale. And I hope Jim can understand that his politics, his stop oil nonsense and all this, that politics is now costing us very dear. And it's very close to home to be.
But he might argue, and as a lot of them do, that we are protecting ourselves on the planet and the planet itself. And without a planet, we're nothing. So we actually need to maintain the planet and ourselves on it. And therefore, we need to use techniques that mean that we do not destroy our environment. This is what they might argue.
More CO2 is good. More CO2 is good. I really do love to one day to be able to explain to GB News. You know, GB News...
You've got time. Explain to me why more CO2 is good, because
right,
most people are saying it's bad.
OK. When you... It's to do with some physics, which I'd need 4 or 5 minutes to explain. That's all. But I could explain it in 4 or 5 minutes.
Can you do it in 3?
I'll try... Well, OK. When you add CO2, the first 25 parts, 50 parts per million takes up most of it, right? Takes up what the radiation there is. And as you add it, it becomes less and less effective. So it's like painting a wall red. If you've got a white wall, you put a coat of red on, it's red. But if you put another coat on, it's redder, and another coat on, it's redder. But after 3 or 4 coats, it makes no difference. Yeah. So extra CO2. Now, this is the physics of it. Now, both sides agree. Both sides agree on the science there, by the way. There's no dispute between me and the alarmists on that, the scientists. Where the dispute comes is they say, but that creates more water vapour, because if you double it now from 400-ish, you'll get 1% more radiation trapped, 1% according to the figures, which is 0.7 of a degree C to go in doubling. What the clouds come in then to it, because that doesn't allow for clouds. And the clouds come in because of the extra water vapour. They don't allow for that. No one has successfully modelled clouds.
So you're saying that the modelling that they have used has not considered external factors like clouds and
correct.
That they will have on the amount of CO2 released into the atmosphere.
And if you look at the satellite temperatures, they're like this. If you then look at all the models, they're like this, 3 to 4 times more heating. But there is one model that's pretty dear. And that model doesn't allow for the extra thing. They treble it. They treble the effect.
So where are the IPCC and people like that? Why are they not explaining to us what their sort of calculations are and how their modelling works as to how they've worked out that it is CO2 that, in their view, is the enemy?
They have. A lot of the physics has. There's a lot of good physics done by the IPCC, but there's the physics and the science, and then there's the political side, which is what the summary for policymakers is, and written by a representative from each country. It's a political document. So when I show Jim, for example, I showed in the IPCC saying there's no more floods, there's no science for that, there's no science for droughts. He goes, as if I'm offering a crucifix to Dracula sort of thing. But in actual fact, it's true. And the scientists said, look, it's warming too much. The models are wrong. They're warming too much. But that doesn't stop the politics. So the politics, well, IPCC will put a president of a small island, Tuvalu, in a pool of water in the coral reef there on a desk and say, look, we're sinking. And when you look at the satellite, they've grown 2.9%. The evidence, and I'd love to be able to present this properly to viewers, and this is the only show on any television or radio show, this Nana Akua show, that allows my view to come across, which is we need more CO2, so we're not damaging the planet.
A lot of people are arguing right now, I mean, all the big major bodies are saying we need to reduce CO2. You've got, obviously, our approach to net zero. The governments and businesses are putting in big money for this. There has to be some truth to what they're saying, and a lot of people feel that this is the reality.
All right, then. Sorry.
Well, quickly then, I've got...
Very quickly. Well, why do leading physicists winning the Nobel Prize now join the association called the CO2 Coalition, which is calling for more CO2? Why are the leading scientists, and why don't they debate me? Why don't they debate people?
Well, they should do, and I don't know what happened to Jim. Jim was supposed to be debating you now, but I think he's been entrapped somewhere. I think he's... Where did he go? Is he on to Thailand? He flew. I think he would have flown to Thailand, obviously. But wherever he is, he probably went on a gas-guzzling machine that took him there. But he is not available to talk to us now. We would really want us to get some balance. What are your views? Do you think that CO2 is the enemy? gbviews@gbnews.com, or tweet me at GBNews. Paul Burgess, climate scientist, thank you very much. Right, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. Just coming up to 32 minutes after 4 o'clock. 3 o'clock on the way, Political Spotlight, where I shine a light on political issues. And joining me, the former Labour Party spokesperson, James Mathewson, on what life is like in Labour politics under Jeremy Corbyn. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
It's 3:32. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Norfolk Police has referred itself to the independent watchdog in relation to the deaths of 4 people on Friday. The force says it didn't respond to a 999 call that was made about an hour before the bodies of a 45-year-old man, a 36-year-old woman and 2 girls were discovered when officers forced their way into a house in Cottessie near Norwich. The man and 2 children are understood to have lived at the address. Police say the woman was visiting. All 4 of them were found with injuries. Churches in the area have opened so people can pay their respects. The Shadow Foreign Secretary was interrupted by multiple protesters during a speech in London this afternoon. David Lammy had to dash backstage after the first protester jumped on to the stage holding a Palestinian flag. His speech was interrupted again by others who continued shouting. Mr. Lammy was later able to finish his speech, saying he wants to see change through power, not protest. The US President suggested there may be a path to peace between Israel and Palestine. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has in the past rejected calls for a 2-state solution, but following talks with President Biden on Friday, the White House now says Mr. Netanyahu is not opposed to all versions of the proposal, suggesting one path could involve a non-militarised government. Tata Steel has pledged a £130 million support package to help workers retrain or find new jobs as it plans to close furnaces at its Port Talbot site. Up to 2,800 jobs will be affected over the next 18 months as the company transitions to a greener way of working. However, unions are warning the move will be devastating for the economy and indeed the steel industry. A European spacecraft has arrived at the International Space Station with crew members from Italy, Turkey and Sweden. They docked about 37 hours after taking off from NASA's Space Center in Florida. They're currently orbiting the globe at the hypersonic speed of around 17,500 miles an hour.
Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And
Supersonic bulletin for you there, and we'll have more coming up a little bit later. Now, it's back to Nana.
Well, thank you very much, Aaron. Coming up, it's Political Spotlight, and joining me to shine a light is former Labour Party spokesperson James Matthewson. He'll be talking about his time working at the core of left-wing British politics. But next, after the news, the King wanted to make his health check public. I'll be speaking to a health expert, Dr. Carol Sikora, about treatment. Don't go anywhere.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. If you just tuned in, where have you been? I'm already getting like that, aren't I? Sorry, I'll do that later on in the show. It's just coming up to 40 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. Don't forget as well, download the GB News app because you can check out all the programmes here on the channel and watch them at will. But welcome back. I'm Nana Akua. We're live, and lots of people are getting in touch as well. gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at GB News. But it's time now for this week's Political Spotlight, where we shine a light on what's going on in the world of politics. The man who's worked at the very heart of the Labour Party before releasing his own paper, Progressive Pragmatism, on political analyst, but who has lost friends on the left after his criticism of Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. Well, I'm pleased to say that I'm joined now by former Labour Party spokesperson James Matthewson. James, thank you very much for coming in.
It's a pleasure to join you, Nana. Thank you.
So, first of all, let's get stuck in Labour Party. There was a poll in the Telegraph saying that actually what has happened is that the Labour Party are going to win. It's going to be a huge, rip-roaring win, and the Tory Party are going to be annihilated, pretty much. Is that what you see?
I think it's all but certain, more or less, which is, I mean, you know, that's not something we normally go in for in politics. But it is, I think, the conversations that you have up and down the country, when something's become so, you know, people are so confident in it that people on the street are starting to acknowledge the fact that they think a Labour landslide is incoming. It tells you all you need to know, really. And I think, to be honest, by that point, once you've reached that level of kind of cut through with the public, then it really does have an influence on the polls.
Now, we've got a map on screen. So for those who are listening on radio, 2019, there's a little bit of yellow there. Liberal Democrats, really, they're going to hold some ground. I can't believe it. But that's SNP, actually.
SNP up in Scotland.
Sorry, they're orange, because the Liberal Democrats, you never know, sometimes it's yellow, sometimes it's orange.
Yeah.
That's the SNP at the top there. And you've got little Liberal Democrats at the very, very tiny top there in 2024, where it looks like they're going to take some ground. You've got a bit of red there for the Conservatives on the outskirts of the little islands on the north-east, south-west coast of Scotland. What's so Conservative about that area? It was SNP before.
This is it. It's that collapse from the SNP that we're seeing. I think when we see that collapse from the SNP, it goes different directions. You know, you have to remember the people who've been brought together by the SNP have been brought together in a coalition who agree on one thing and one thing alone, and that's independence. Their politics can be scattered all over the place. They can be to the right economically, or you know, they can be socially conservative, or they could be left wing. So they're united around independence, and now that independence is pretty much guaranteed to not happen, and people are seeing that it's, you know, going to be a pipe dream for the future. You know, people like Nicola Sturgeon are throwing the towel in, saying she's had enough of a political career. You know, she would be hanging around if she thought there was a chance to secure independence. However,
I don't think she had much choice after with the £600,000 caravan and all the stuff that's been going on. Her WhatsApps have just WhatsApped and gone.
You said it. You said it. But that's it. But I think you'll see those SNP votes. You know, the collapse in the faith in the SNP in Scotland's collapsed. You'll see that spreading out amongst the parties. But crucially, it gives Labour enough seats to be able to form that majority.
Well, I did always say that the failure of the Labour Party was the reason why we had a sort of fragmented Scotland, one that was ready to, you know, detach from the UK, United Kingdom. And now, obviously, the SNP have absolutely destroyed their chances. Firstly, with that gender recognition reform, which I thought was just absolute nonsense. Then with all these sort of things that have come now. What's your view on the state of Scottish politics? Because I'm wondering where you are with that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Being based in Edinburgh myself full time, I mean, I have conversations with people who are passionately independent, you know, pro-independence still. Ironically, a lot of the people who I speak to who are pro-independence still aren't Scottish. You know, they're people who've moved into Scotland and are really passionate about Scottish identity. But actually, when you look at devolution, I'm experiencing it up there, the benefits of devolution are colossal. They've been absolutely huge. You know, what Scottish people get from the devolution deal right now is immense, and what they're able to do and influence in the Scottish Parliament. And the way the Scottish Parliament runs, we could learn things from it in Westminster.
Yeah.
I really do think it's a shining example. But, you know, to throw that away for the sake of, you know, identity politics just seems, you know, I think shocking. And now more people recognise that. They don't want to risk it.
And obviously with Edinburgh being your base, I just thought I'd mentioned Hamza Youssef, which it's so unfortunate that useless just rolls off your tongue so easily and fits so neatly. But he has almost been given a poison chalice. And sometimes I have a slight feel of sorry for him, a little bit. But I think he's useless, I have to say. Now, I don't think any of his, you know, the way he's gone about things, I don't think he's particularly good. But
I think he's
Scottish people.
I do think he's an effective politician. People seem to like him on the ground, they do. And same with Anas Sarwar and the Labour Party. You know, they've been around for a while. They've been doing the groundwork, and they're likeable politicians. And they represent quite a modern Scotland. You know, a diverse Scotland, and they stand for a lot of what, you know, Scottish values are perceived to be these days. The SNP as a party, however, I don't think you can climb back from the level of controversy they've seen. You know, it's toxic now, and people are looking back and they're saying, we remember the Labour Party, we remember the Tories, they were safe bets, and we can put our vote back there.
Interesting, isn't it? And of course, you were somebody who was not a supporter of Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, I was supporting Jeremy initially.
But then...
I mean, I very much came from the left. My political journey was very left-wing. I mean, my idols growing up with Thomas Sankara and you know, Karl Marx and Che Guevara, like every good young socialist. Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, during my time working in politics, I realised, you know, the hypocrisy that we were seeing on the left, because we would go out to picket lines, we would go out to protests, and we would shout about how we won't work with the Tories, we won't work with them. And then the only way things would be achieved in Westminster was by coming round the table and having adult discussions with people you disagree with. Once you realise that, it's very difficult to be an ideologue and to be driven by that, OK, this is my staunch ideology and I don't deal with anyone who disagrees with it. Because ultimately, compromise is the way things are done, achieved. And every day, I don't think people realise in this country how much is achieved in Parliament through cooperation between the parties behind the scenes.
Do you think that's what's gone wrong with a lot of the political dialogue that you see? I mean, until GBNews came along, I didn't really see the level of balance, because a lot of people come onto this channel, they're very left-wing, and we get talking, like Matthew Laza or even Matthew Stadlen, you get talking, and suddenly we start to find this common ground. And then people don't seem so scary in the end.
Yeah, they're not. If you sit down with anyone, you go and have a pint with someone, you go and have a coffee with someone, you realise that you can get to know them, you can chat to them. And this was the thing for me. I mean, I grew up in the northeast of England, you know. Margaret Thatcher was a swear word in our household and remained to be, you know. I, you know, couldn't agree more with those sentiments, really, in my political views. However, when you get to Westminster and you meet these Tories who are terrifying, you know, and you suddenly realise they're human beings with thoughts and opinions, and, you know, and they just have a different way of doing things to you, then you're able to have those conversations. And actually, you know, that was why on the left and elements of the hard left saying, you know, oh, we will have nothing to do with the Tories, whilst at the same time Labour MPs on the left having to go behind the scenes to get things done. I mean, I knew a Labour MP on the left who managed to stop a college in his constituency being closed by cooperation with Michael Gove, you know, a conversation with him. And then the next day was shouting about Michael Gove on a picket line.
Well, that's what I kind of like about politics. You can have your disagreements, but you still talk afterwards. And it's good that people like Nigel Farage, who went to the jungle, and, you know, a lot of people go, Nigel Farage, and they think, oh, he's actually really polite. He's a real gentleman. He's really nice.
Well, that's it. I mean, I disagree with basically everything Nigel Farage says, but I support his right to say it, you know, and I'll stand there and listen to him, and, you know, he can put it forward, and that's got to be the central tenet of a democracy, in Western liberal democracy especially.
Now, what about Sir Keir Starmer? He's running the Labour Party. Do you think he's doing an effective job?
I think so. I mean, we've just been talking about the fact we saw that map there, you know, we're going to see a landslide. I mean, could you see more of an effective job than that? I don't think so, you know?
But there's still time. I mean, you know, there seems to be a somewhat fragmented party, in particular when it comes to Israel. People don't like the look of that. I mean, that whole, you know, the British people are very strong with their view that you should be able to protect yourself. But what's happened with this whole Hamas and this pro-Palestinian conversation, people are sort of merging the two. And seeing the Labour Party MPs just, you know, or councillors stepping down as a result because they're not happy with Keir Starmer's stance. It's not very...
And the Labour movement, you know, as a whole, born out of the trade union movement and born out of working class people, and especially a lot of working class immigrants, you know, we have a proud tradition in the Labour Party of Jewish members and Jewish supporters, you know, huge swathes of it, who were abandoned and felt left by the anti-Semitism, you know, situation in the Labour Party. We saw what happened in seats, you know, like Barnet, where we lost because of that. But at the same time, we also have strong Muslim supporters and people who, you know, are proud to support the Labour Party. There's another heritage there. So this is Labour's issue of trying to balance its different elements and its different heritage and all its support groups, when increasingly we see polarisation between British Jews and British Muslims over the issue of Israel and the Gaza conflict. It's why I think seeing groups, you know, Joe Cox is widower, Brendan Cox, he's doing work, I know, to kind of try and bring those communities together with Hope Not Hate. So groups like that are really doing important work, because seeing those divisions here is very frightening for a lot of people.
Well, that could be, if they're not careful, their Achilles heel. Mind you, I don't think they need... something really bad would need to happen for them to lose, I think. Or the Tory party could do something good, but...
It's theirs to lose, though, isn't it? That's it. It's theirs to lose.
Well, it is. James Mathewson, thank you very much for coming
Thank you.
to me. That is, of course, James Mathewson. He's a former Labour Party spokesperson. Oh, wow. So that was Political Spotlight. Very interesting stuff. Right. But let's return now to my health watch, because King Charles has returned to Sandringham from Scotland ahead of his hospital visit. He's due to be treated for a benign enlarged prostate next week, and the monarch has said that he's keen to go public with the condition to encourage other men to get checked. So joining me now is the former director of the WHO Cancer Programme, Professor Carol Sikora. Carol, thank you very much for joining me. It's really good to talk to you. I've read a lot of your stuff. I want to talk to you about this enlarged prostate then. What I mean, I'm presuming it's not a tumour, it's not a lump. What is it? What does it mean?
So all men have a prostate gland. A lot of people don't know where it is. It's actually around the urethra, the tube that connects the bladder to the outside world. And it's about the size of an apricot normally. And as you get older, in all men, it enlarges. And if it gets to a certain size, and sometimes it enlarges unequally on different sides, it blocks the outflow of urine from the bladder to the outside world. So if you notice, men take longer to pee when they get older than when they're young. And that's because the prostate normally enlarges. We call it benign prostatic hypertrophy, Nana, but that's just because it's increased size of the prostate. Now, the worry about it all is in some patients there will be prostate cancer. So I'm sure what's happened to the King is he's been screened very well for cancer. There's been no hint that there's any indication that his markers for cancer, the PSA test, is raised. So the procedure he's likely to have is just going to be what we call transurethral resection, or TUR, where you just pull out bits of the prostate, very minor procedure under anaesthetic, and then maybe a night in hospital and then home, and watching carefully to make sure there's no infection. That's the usual way it's done.
Yeah, well, it's good of him to talk about it, actually, even though it did sort of feel a bit uncomfortable hearing that. You think, King Charles' prostate, you know, but the fact that he shared it is good because other men probably have that sort of weird feeling when they're going to talk about stuff like that. So it's good for him to acknowledge that, for us all to acknowledge that he's human. Now, I wanted to ask you about the measles vaccination and what's going on with that, because there seems to be a bit of an outbreak in certain parts of this country.
Sorry, of what? No, I didn't hear
the
that.
measles outbreak at the moment.
The what? The
measles. The MMR, measles.
Oh, measles, sorry.
Measles, yes, sorry. What does that sound like I was saying?
You remember many years ago the scandal of the Wakefield scandal when a physician who actually got struck off by the medical council put out this stuff that autism and various other mental health disorders in children were caused by the MMR vaccine. So people stopped vaccinating their kids. Some parents decided to give them partial vaccines from the MMR, and it was separated. Others continued. And what's happened, we've got the combination of the anti-vax feeling from COVID together with the Wakefield scandal of nearly 20 years ago has made people feel that vaccination may not be as safe as it's made out. The trouble is measles is a nasty disease, only in a small percentage of children, but it can be a nasty disease and it can lead to all sorts of complications that have long-lasting problems. So I think, you know, measles is we think of it as a trivial illness that is nothing, but it can
cause encephalitis, can't it? Listen, Carol, I've got to go because we've run out of time. So sorry but we'll talk again. That is Dr. Carol Sikora. This is GB News. Loads more still to come. My panel will be joining me in the next hour.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News weather. We've got Storm Isha on the way, particularly through Sunday evening, overnight into Monday morning, damaging gusts of wind, some large waves around the coast, some heavy rain too. It's unsettled over the next 24 hours and very unsettled Sunday into Monday as that storm moves through, and then it remains unsettled into next week too. Outbreaks of heavy rain already pushing in this evening across western parts of the UK, some hail mixed in there too, very strong and gusty winds, gales around the coast, but starting to ease a little during the early hours with some clear spells developing, but also some blustery showers too. Temperatures, well, generally frost-free, which we haven't seen for a while, 4 to 6 Celsius across many areas. A mixed start to Sunday morning, some bright spells, the best of these across northeast Scotland, also central southern parts of England, but then Storm Isha moves in during the latter part of the morning through the afternoon, bringing outbreaks of heavy rain, very strong winds developing, particularly as we head into the evening time and overnight, 60, 70, locally 80 miles an hour. Met Office amber warnings come in force for Sunday evening. The afternoon temperatures above average for the time of year, but given the strengthening winds, it will feel cooler than this. Blustery, unsettled start to Monday, some disruption to the morning commute. Warnings in force across the board for those strong winds. It remains unsettled over the coming week with further heavy rain as we head towards Tuesday and into Wednesday.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
So coming up, I'll be joined by my amazing panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also former Labour Party advisor Matthew Elaza. But up next, I couldn't resist my monologue on Prince Harry. Stay tuned, that is on the way. As ever, get in touch in the usual way, gbnews@gbnews.com or tweet me at gbnews. But now, let's get an update with your weather.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, We'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza. Before we get started, let's get your latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
Good afternoon to you. It is 4 o'clock. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. Norfolk Police has referred itself to the independent watchdog in relation to the deaths of 4 people on Friday. The force says it did not respond to a 999 call that was made about an hour before the bodies of a 45-year-old man, a 36-year-old woman and 2 girls were discovered when officers forced their way into a house near Norwich. The man and 2 children are understood to have lived at the address. Police say the woman was visiting. All 4 of them were found with injuries. Churches in the area have opened so people can pay their respects. The Shadow Foreign Secretary has been interrupted by pro-Palestinian protesters during a speech in London. David Lammy had to dash backstage when a demonstrator jumped onto the platform holding a Palestinian flag. The woman called for him to condemn genocide in Gaza, shouting, "How many more children need to die?" His speech was interrupted again by others who continued shouting. Mr. Lammy was later able to finish his speech. He says everyone wants to see a sustainable ceasefire in Gaza.
The situation in Gaza is intolerable and unbearable. Too many children, women, old people have lost their lives. We need a truce now so that humanitarian aid can get in. We need a sustainable ceasefire. I'm hugely worried about what I'm hearing from UK aid agencies and from the United Nations, and the medical attention that over 60,000 people who are now wounded or maimed need. We must get urgent aid in.
The US president has suggested a two-state solution may still be a possibility in the Middle East. Joe Biden spoke to Israel's prime minister on Friday, a day after Benjamin Netanyahu rejected US calls for the establishment of a Palestinian state once the war's over. However, following their conversation, President Biden now says Mr. Netanyahu is not opposed to all versions of the proposal, suggesting one path could involve a non-militarised government. 2 British Royal Navy ships have been involved in a collision in a port in Bahrain. No one was injured in the accident, and an investigation into it has been opened. The Royal Navy is working with the US Navy in the Gulf region to protect Red Sea shipping from increased attacks by Houthi rebels based in Yemen. Tata Steel's pledged a £130 million support package to help workers retrain or find new jobs as it plans to close furnaces at its Port Talbot site. Up to 2,800 jobs will be affected over the next 18 months. The company says it's transitioning to a greener way of working. However, unions are warning the move will be devastating for the economy and the steel industry. The mother of a teenager who was stabbed to death is appealing for information as a £20,000 reward is being offered. 19-year-old Eddie King Mathemba Kinuthai suffered multiple stab wounds when he was attacked in a park known as the Grosvenor Road Triangle in Bristol on the 21st of July last year. A total of 6 men have been arrested by Avon and Somerset police on suspicion of murder. 3 remain on bail. The others have been released without charge. Police are appealing for anyone with information to get in touch. Now, if you thought your shopping bags were feeling a little lighter, it may be because more products are getting smaller. Mouthwash, tea bags and sausages are among the supermarket staples that have been downsized as manufacturers look to cut costs. That is according to the consumer watchdog, which they found Listerine's Fresh Burst mouthwash shrank by 100 millilitres, despite its price on Tesco shelves going up by 52 pence. It means shoppers paid 21% more for 17% less. Shrinkflation. Meanwhile, a box of PG Tips Tasty Decaf Pyramid variety used to contain 180 tea bags. Now at many supermarkets, you'll get just 140. And a 6-legged dog found abandoned in a car park has had her extra limbs removed. Ariel, a spaniel puppy, was found in Pembroke's town centre in September last year with a curious birth defect that saw her sporting 6 legs. Well, after a fundraising appeal that raised about £15,000, her surplus limbs were safely removed. The dog was taken in by Green Acres Rescue Charity and is now being cared for by a foster family. Lovely story to end with. This is GB News on TV, on digital radio and on your smart speaker too. Now it's back to Nana.
Hello, good afternoon. It's fast approaching 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. There's a lot in the news at the moment, but now for some light relief. Some might even call it humour. Prince Harry. Oh dear. It's finally dawning on him that unnecessary legal battles over he said, she said, which, with not much to go on, cost money, and frankly, it's money he needs to keep hold of, judging by how well he and his missus are currently being received over in the States in the crumbling Montecito empire. Whilst the royal family have been diligently and admirably getting on with the job, the king, with his enlarged prostate, which all credit to him, he shamelessly overshared as a way of encouraging men to get tested. Hearing it kind of felt like when you discover your parents have sex, do you know what I mean? But I'm proud of him nonetheless. And Catherine stepping back until Easter following her operation. Prince Harry has taken the sensible decision to get out whilst he still can and withdraw from his legal action against the Mail on Sunday with a relatively low legal bill in comparison to the millions it was likely to cost him to take them to court. The case has already racked up an estimated bill of £750,000, and his decision on Friday was made just hours before he was supposed to be handing over relevant documents to the High Court. His reasoning? By pursuing the claim, he'd be giving a continued platform to what he called the mailed false claims made 2 years ago. Apparently, he now wants to focus on his legal action against the Home Office last year and on the safety of his family. Pull the other one. I'd say he's done more damage to his own safety revealing his kill count in his tell-all memoir Spare. And more like his lawyers have done the responsible thing, even though they would have bagged a fortune whether he won or lost, and told him how unwise, risky and expensive it would be to carry on. Or perhaps Meghan has had a word. I mean, their earning power appears to be dwindling, and with 3 more cases on the go, it's not cheap. In the meantime, the royal family have gone from strength to strength, even quietly getting a bill passed to ensure that only working royals are able to take the helm if the king is incapacitated. Which, in layman terms, simply basically means that neither Andrew nor Harry will be allowed to take charge, or it won't be easy for them to do that. King Charles learnt a lesson from his outstanding mother, the late Queen, who I have yet to hear anyone say a bad word about. That's an example you want to follow, but sadly, Harry seems to have learned absolutely nothing. Well, at least he has his Living Legend of Aviation Award, which he was apparently personally handed by John Travolta. I wonder how his mates who fought with him in Afghanistan feel about that. I doubt they'll be impressed. In any case, a medal won't pay his bills. But before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should asylum seekers be allowed to work? Now, according to data obtained under the Freedom of Information laws, the Home Office has granted asylum seekers a route to employment in care, construction and farming. But would you want to be cared for? But I don't know, I'm sorry. And then at 4:50, it's Royal Roundup time. Royal biographer Angela Levin will be here to give me the latest from behind the palace walls. On the menu, there have been multiple health scares this week within the palace. Prince Harry dropped his libel case against the Mail on Sunday. You heard my monologue. We'll bring you the latest. Angela will give us an update. And then at 5, it's this week's difficult conversation. Danielle Mason will be in the studio live. Now, Danielle is a TV personality and a presenter, and she'll be speaking about her battle with mental health. She's also the sister of Cat Slater of EastEnders. That didn't sound like it at all. But that's coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's welcome again to my panel broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza. I love that smoky look you gave Lizzie Cundy.
Woo, thank you, darling.
No one does it better.
Yes, good at it. Actually, I have to say, please be careful out there. I went skidding on my knee. It was like James Warville from Dancing on Ice. And it's very cold out there, I have to say, but...
Yeah, you're sporting an injury.
I'm sporting an injury, but made it.
So you did that just before you came here?
Just, yes.
Ow!
Great.
You didn't miss the bump plaster.
No. Well, I've got to start with you, Lizzie, because you've sat next to Meghan, or you know Meghan.
Well, I knew Meghan very well, and I was actually knew Harry as well. I was in the World Cup in South Africa with Prince Harry.
Really?
To his PRs, I won't say the face he gave when he knew I was next door to Harry in the hotel, the same hotel in South Africa, was something else. So, I've got a few stories. We'll save it for another book. But, yeah, the living legend of aviation. I'd like to call him Prince of the Old Bailey, or maybe bail out, because he's decided not to go through with it. And wisely, I mean, that was the right decision, Harry, because it was going to cost him an absolute fortune, and also in his reputation, because sadly he wasn't going to win this case. He knew it, the court knew it, his lawyers knew it, and he's gracefully withdrawn, or should I say disgracefully, because he's still got egg on his face, let me tell you. Look, Harry doesn't seem to realise that litigation is very expensive, it's very stressful. It's not like a row in the kitchen with your brother about a broken necklace. This is so expensive, and it can really, really, I mean, totally ruin you, not just, you know, financially, but in your reputation.
Yeah.
And this is what was going to happen, sadly, to Harry. But Harry doesn't seem to realise in court you need evidence, you need proof. It's not just hearsay, and you can't be dabbing both, you know, saying, look, I want this story put in the press, but now I don't want it. No, 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 and stamp your feet. It's not like that, Harry. And sadly, he's learnt that to the cost of over £750,000.
But has he? He's got 3 more on the go.
Well, he has got 3 more on the go.
And, you know, because I don't want to see him penniless, but the way he's going on, he will be, Matthew Lawson.
Absolutely. Well, I want to make sure none of our money ends up paying any of this legal bill, even by, you know, a slightly roundabout route. Obviously, he's not getting money directly from what was the civil list anymore, the Royal Grant, as he's not a working royal. But obviously, it all kind of, you know, creative accounting, etc. You know, so I think it's absolutely sensible thing to do. But I hope he learns his lesson. So you say there are 3 more. Let's hope that perhaps gently, at least 1 more of those is dropped, because otherwise he's going to end up in trouble. And I just think it leaves a nasty sort of taste in the mouth, doesn't it? Because as you say in your monologue, it contrasts with the royal family who, when things are said about them they don't agree with, they take it on the chin and they show dignity. And instead he's got himself involved in a fight that he's not even lost because he hasn't got that far. He's had to withdraw, having sort of marched halfway up the hill.
But what is winning? What is winning?
Exactly.
What is winning? If they say, great, you've won, now you've got all these costs to pay, this is not winning. So, you know, winning is staying silent, winning the support of those around you who maybe, you know, the public. Look at what the royal family have done. They've been very calm. They've stepped back. And in the meantime, whilst all this has been happening, King Charles, they obviously got a bill passed so that Harry cannot be, and Andrew can't be directly sort of well, they're still in the line of succession, but it's not easy for them to take over if he's incapacitated. So, you know, that's what's been going on.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it's dreadful, actually, because we look what's going on with our king, with Kate, who's in hospital, and we wish her all well, as we do with King Charles. But, you know, he called his book Spare. That's what he was, to step in when things like this happen.
But even that, he's blown it.
But he's blown it. You know, he's blown it. He wants to be this dragon slayer of the press.
He's not even the Spare anymore,
He's not the Spare.
He's not even Spare.
He wants to, and sadly, for Prince Harry, he can't. He just blames the press for, sadly, the death of his mother. And we all know, I'm sorry, it was a drunken driver, and she wasn't wearing a seatbelt. And he will go on, and this has been his campaign to get the press morning, noon and night. Sorry, Harry, it's time to give it up.
And it's time to concentrate on what he's going to do next, because that's the problem, isn't it? Because things are... Yeah, because he's complaining in one of the court cases about the protection for his family, the security protection. But what about the financial protection that he's just taken a great big hole in his financial ship?
But what did Harry think it was? Rent-a-cop? What does he actually think? It doesn't make any sense. And sadly, I know someone that's been working on this case with Harry, and he wouldn't take no for an answer. They were telling him this wasn't going to work out. He didn't want to listen.
So it brings his judgment into question, doesn't it?
But yes, it certainly does.
God, I don't know why he's doing that. Look, he's got this beautiful wife. I don't know what she's like personally. I've never met her. You have, Lizzie. He's got 2 beautiful kids. We never see them, so I don't know what they look like either. But they've
only been to Britain once, haven't they?
But they're probably really nice. And he's got all the money that he really could want. In fact, all the money in the world, if he really wanted to. And he could have had this wonderful role as a spare, which he's whinging about, which he isn't anymore anyway, so he should be glad about that. But he could have had this wonderful life and just not having to take the pressure of the spotlight, but just sitting just slightly under it, where you get all the benefits but none of the aggro. And he couldn't see what a wonderful position that is.
No, and all he's done is whinged and moaned and talked about his family, sold stories about his family that weren't true, taking anyone to court. I mean, he is Prince of the Old Bailey, but it's not working out, Harry. You need to stop. They really need to get a grip of reality and be very thankful for what they've got.
Why don't they just try and, you know, most people would be... I would be overjoyed if I was Queen Nana. And by the way, I looked at what Nana means. Nana is what they put in front of the royals in Ghana. So Nana, or so male, female. So I'm royal, sort of thing.
You are looking very queen-like.
We always thought you had majesty about you.
But unfortunately, I'm in that place where you're not quite in the royal, but you're sort of under the spare, but without the money.
You're doing better than us commoners.
Well, that's where he will be if he's not careful.
I wish Harry would take a leaf out of his brother's book and look how wonderfully he has been, and his poor wife going through all what she's going through at the moment. I think Harry and Meghan should really take a good look at themselves and shame on them.
What are they going to call the next edition of the book? A formal almost spare.
Yes.
Not spare anymore. Not spare.
There is another
Ex-spare.
book. I've heard it. There is another book coming.
Oh, God. Another book. Well, I think this one no one's going to buy. You saw what happened to Scooby-Doo's book, Over Scabies. What happened to that book? Nobody bought it. It was something like 900 on Amazon, so I think Prince Harry, I don't think people will be buying this again if he does come out with another book. But if you just tuned in, welcome on board. This is GB News. It is fast approaching 17 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and digital radio. Coming up, it's Royal Roundup time. Angela Levin will be here to give us the latest from behind the palace walls, so we'll get even more of an update. But up next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should asylum seekers be allowed to work? I've got a poll up right now on X asking you that very question. Should asylum seekers be allowed to work? Send me your thoughts. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at GBNews. Cast your vote now.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So, welcome back. It's just coming up to 21 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Now, before the break, I was discussing King Charles and also mentioned Harry and the fact that he's not doing all his legal stuff. He's pulled out of one of his legal claims against the Mail on Sunday. Let's see what you've been saying. Matthew says, in regard to Prince Harry and his woes, a wise man once said, if you don't start none, there won't be none. I like that. It's true, isn't it? Margaret says, great to hear that Harry is not continuing his libel case. What would really be great is if he just swallowed his pride and offered his help to the family, as things are rather difficult at the moment. Yeah, and we would actually all be quite happy to see him back, as long as he doesn't come with that attitude where he's always whinging about everything. And Lucy says, what a shameless waste of money, isn't it? Think of what you could have done with that. She says, Harry could have given $750k to a deserving charity. Absolutely. And Maureen says, rather coincidental that Harry all of a sudden is dropping his libel case. Is he now worried about his position when his father is being admitted to hospital with health issues? Yes, interesting. I didn't actually look at it at that angle, but that's an interesting point. Keep your thoughts coming, gbviews at gbnews.com. But it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should asylum seekers be allowed to work? According to data obtained under the Freedom of Information laws, migrants arriving through the Channel have been discreetly granted the right to work in industries such as care, construction and agriculture. Now, they are permitted employment in sectors facing staff shortages and receive 80% of the going pay rate. European nations have previously blamed migrant crossings on the generosity of Britain's work and welfare system. So what do you think? For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should asylum seekers be allowed to work? Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by former International Security Advisor Henry Bolton, political commentator and author Tonya Buxton, author and social cohesion expert Rakib Hassan, and political commentator Benedict Spence. Right, so I'm going to start with you, Rakib. What do you think? Should they be allowed to work? What are your thoughts?
My view, Nana, is absolutely not. I think there needs to be a very clear line between asylum seekers who have claims that are being considered and those who are granted genuine refugee status. I have to say, Nana, the Telegraph article which covered this, I had to read it twice to actually believe this was actually government policy. I find it absolutely incredible. Not only this would act as a pull factor, we already have a serious problem with illegal migration on the English South Coast. I think there's a grave injustice here because asylum seekers, many of whom have entered the country illegally, would be offered the chance to work, but would also benefit from state-funded accommodation and food. And to be quite honest, there are many Brits who are languishing in very low-paid roles, but also have to pay eye-watering rent rates, as well as having to cope with stubbornly high food prices. And I think that's grossly unfair.
Well, a lot of people might say that actually, rather than us paying for them, it would be better that they actually contribute. Let's go to Henry. You'll probably say the same thing. Actually, Tonya, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm saying the same thing as well. I think this is going to be a pull factor, as Nigel Farage said, to getting people coming into the country. Can you imagine? The traffickers are now going to advertise that not only can we get you over to Britain, but we can get you jobs and free board as well. So it's a really terrible thing. It's a bad idea. And the fact that it took a Freedom of Information from the Telegraph to find out, it shows you that the government were doing it quite sneakily. They did not want us to know about this.
Because it's just suddenly appeared. It's not been a narrative. It's not been a conversation they've been having, and not really finding out what the public's view was. Because I think most people would probably find it outrageous. Henry Bolton.
Yeah, the answer, Nana, is no. They shouldn't be doing this. And it's disgusting that the government has done it in such an opaque manner. The first thing is we've just gone through the Rwanda bill, haven't we, and all the shenanigans about that. And that's still going on, of course, because it's got to go to the Lords. But the thing here is we've been told that that's to be a deterrent because the government wants to deter people from crossing the Channel. Well, you know, I don't think there are many viewers watching this now who would think offering these people a job when they get here is much of a deterrent. So that's point number one. Point number two is most of these people would have been employed on the basis that they only get paid 80% of what a British worker would get paid. So, for example, in sectors that are looking for low-skilled workers, such as the care industry and so on, they are being paid 80% less than a British worker. They are pricing British workers out of the market. And the third thing is, you know, as has already been said, this is a massive marketing opportunity for the people smugglers. It is absolutely mind-bogglingly stupid that the Home Office has gone down this route. And as for people saying they're contributing,
Henry.
Yeah.
They will have been there for a year. So this is for people who've been there for about a year. And we've been paying for them. Now, this is like, we're paying how much? 8 million a day for these people, and they're not contributing at all. Nothing much is going to change. So surely it's better to get money out of them and get them working and making money than paying for them, Henry. Is that not better?
No, because actually all of the actual analysis shows that they actually on net cost us money. So you're attracting more over that are costing us money. But that aside, I mean, if you are the reason that they're here for so long, and Rishi Sunak has told us that the backlog was cleared, it hasn't been cleared. There's still about 100,000 people in the backlog. But the problem is the resourcing of the staff that are processing these people. They're only here for a year plus because we can't turn it around any quicker.
Well, perhaps they could use some of these. Perhaps they could use some of these channel migrants to process their claims. Let's go to Benedict Spence.
well, no, it wouldn't surprise me. It really wouldn't.
Benedict Spence.
We're going to create a sort of a capo system where these ones get special treatment. They can stay as long as they deport their fellow asylum seekers. I mean, the problem
that's not a bad idea, actually.
This isn't going to be much of a debate, I'm afraid. And the other three members of this panel have all said many of my points for me. So sorry about that. But I do think that there's, I think that actually something we've not touched upon, because we've touched upon just about everything, is that actually this is rather cruel, I think, to people who are claiming asylum in this country, who have no real idea what the timeline might be under which they may or may not be sent back. And they're told, well, whilst you're here, you can do this little bit of labour, you can do this work, and who knows, maybe it's sold to them as a sort of well, this might actually help your case. Maybe if you show that you're prepared to work on subsistence wages in very poor accommodation, maybe this will work in your favour. And then who knows, at some point, maybe you get to stay. And they're going to be consistently working this whole time, not knowing if the rug is going to be sort of pulled out from under their feet as a sort of well, you're not actually of any value to us. You're just here to work at very dirt poor conditions. And maybe we send you home, maybe we don't. I don't think that that's the best way of dealing with it. I think what Henry is saying is correct, actually, that this is a way of the government being able to say, well, look, there's some value being put into the system by these people. And what the government then doesn't have to do is process them very quickly and say to them, which can be rather difficult. Yes, you're going to stay and we need to pay for you. Or no, you're not and we're sending you home. That should be the sort of thing that is completed within a matter of weeks. And it simply isn't. It's being drawn out over months. I think you're giving people false hope if you then allow them to enter the workforce, to then perhaps have that taken away from them.
Oh, poor things, Tonya.
What is this really doing is highlighting the incompetence of the government. That's all it's doing. It's a nightmare for Rishi because we hadn't even looked at this, and now everyone's realising that people are here for over a year, just, getting free board, getting free accommodation, making a mess of our communities. So this is a big, big nightmare for Rishi. And really, what it should be taking our minds back to is the fact that we have an incompetent government. I mean, not that I think Labour would be any better at all, but the big problem is let's get people in and out within a month. That's what they should arrive in the country and they should be either staying or out within a month. That's what needs to be done.
Well, there's no reason why you can't screen them if you've got the resources. Screen them immediately. And the other thing is, It's not just an assumption as to whether or not they'd be able to stay, but actually you will find if they appeal against removal, then the argument will be that they've got settled life here. They've got employment, they've got accommodation, they've made friends, maybe they got into relationships and so on. And that will be an obstacle to removing them anyway, people who shouldn't have been here in the first place.
I don't think that we should be paying for legal challenges. I think that if you're going to have a legal challenge, you have to pay for it yourself. Rakib?
No, I just make the point that actually the way the system would be constituted this way, it actually offers, in my view, some illegal migrants the opportunity to accumulate wealth, which is quite astonishing because many law-abiding British citizens simply do not have the opportunity to do that because they're in very precarious, low-paid sections of the labour market. And as I said, they have significant housing and food costs. So along with the fact that it's a pull factor, I think that there's a grave injustice at play here.
OK. Well, listen, I want a yes or no from you, so I'm going to start with you. Henry Bolton, should they be allowed to work, yes or no?
Big capital letters highlighted no.
Tonya Buxton, yes or no?
No way, no.
Benedict Spence, yes or no?
I suspect it's going to be a clean sweep, but mine's no as well.
And Rakib Hassan?
It will be a clean sweep. It's a no from me.
Well, I actually think that perhaps I would like to make them useful, and I personally think that they could be allowed to work, but I would have them processed before a year, so then they wouldn't even get that far. But thank you very much to all of you, Dr. Rakib Hassan, Benedict Spence, Tonya Buxton and Henry Bolton. Lovely to talk to you all. Really good. Right, so what do you think at home? gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at GBNews. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should asylum seekers be allowed to work? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, Matthew Laza and Lizzie Cundy. Still to come, though, my difficult conversation is with Danielle Mason. She's the sister of EastEnders actress and star Jessie Wallace, known for playing Cat Slater. She will be live in the studio in a few moments' time, but first, let's get your latest news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
It's 4:31. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Norfolk Police has referred itself to the independent watchdog in relation to the deaths of 4 members of the same family that happened on Friday. The force says it didn't respond to an emergency 999 call made about an hour before the bodies of a 45-year-old man, a 36-year-old woman and 2 girls were discovered at a house in Cossey near Norwich. All 4 were found with injuries. The force had already referred itself to the watchdog after officers were called to the same house last month as part of a missing person inquiry. Police say that will now be re-examined. Pro-Palestinian protesters forced the shadow foreign secretary to dash backstage during a speech in London earlier. David Lammy was addressing the Fabian Society when flag-waving demonstrators mounted the stage to criticise Labour's stance on the Israel-Gaza war. They were saying, "When will you condemn the genocide? How many more children need to die?" Mr Lammy was later able to finish his speech, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza through change, through power, not protest. The US President has suggested there may be a path to peace between Israel and Palestine that involves a 2-state solution. And the Israeli Prime Minister has vehemently rejected calls for a Palestinian state to be established after the conflict in Gaza. But following talks with President Biden on Friday, the White House now says Benjamin Netanyahu is not opposed to all versions of the proposal, suggesting one path could involve a non-militarised government. Tata Steel's pledged a £130 million support package to help workers retrain or find new jobs as it plans to close furnaces at its Port Talbot site. Up to 2,800 jobs will be affected over the next 18 months as the company transitions to a greener way of working. However, unions are warning the move will be devastating for the economy and the steel industry. A European spacecraft has arrived at the International Space Station with crew members from Italy, Turkey and Sweden. They docked about 37 hours after taking off from NASA's Space Center in Florida. They're currently orbiting the globe at the hypersonic speed of around 17,500 miles an hour. And we'll be back with a full bulletin at the top of the next hour, or there's more on our website now, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, 34 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Now, coming up, royal biographer Angela Levin will be live in the studio with the latest from behind the palace walls in my royal roundup. But up next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should asylum seekers be allowed to work? I've got a poll up right now on X asking you that very question. What do you think? Should they? Get in touch. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at GBNews. Cast your vote now.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Sorry.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's because it was 39 minutes. I was thinking 39 minutes. Good afternoon. 39 minutes after 4 o'clock.
Love it.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. The voices you hear are my panellists. Joining me, I've got the fabulous Lizzie Cundy and also Matthew Lazar. It's time now, though, for the Great British Debate This Out. And I'm asking, should asylum seekers be allowed to work? Now, according to data obtained under the Freedom of Information laws, migrants arriving through the Channel have been discreetly granted the right to work in industries such as care, construction and agriculture. So for the Great British Debate This Hour, I'm asking, should they be allowed to work? Honestly. Right, so let's see what my panel make of that. I'll start with you, Matthew Lazar.
So I think they should, Nana. Let's just be clear. This is after the government has failed to process their applications for years. What I'd ideally like to see is applications processed in weeks, not months, and people who shouldn't be here sent home.
Yeah.
So that's obviously the ideal. Labour, my party, has pledged to employ 1,000 more people to process those cases. But whilst people are sitting here for over a year, let's get them doing something useful rather than sitting around in the hotels, which is where many of them are are, hanging around on street corners, which is one of the complaints you hear from local communities, that because it's 93% of them are men, so therefore it's groups of men hanging around on street corners, which is what worrying you. They're only in these they're only allowed to apply. They have to apply for a permission to do this, and they're only allowed in shortage sectors. Care is one of them. I suspect most of them will be going into agriculture and be picking things in the fields, which is a massive shortage. So it seems to me that.
But what about the argument that this is a draw to invite more people to come and do that? You might be thinking, I'm going to get money from them, but in the end, you're going to have a load of people coming in for the jobs.
I think it would be more of a draw if it was from day one. The thing is after a year. So you've had a year where you're not allowed to work, you're not allowed to earn any money, where you're on the £48.13 allowance now. And of course, when they're working, they don't get the £48.13 allowance, and they can stay in the accommodation, but they have to contribute towards the accommodation for their wages. So at least the government's getting some of the money back.
Yes, but what is the government's incentive to get them processed if they know they can get cheap labour?
Well, exactly. We've already got 94,000 asylum seekers still awaiting to be processed. I'm sorry, who is doing the safety checks here? We don't know where they're from. We know they throw away their official papers when some arrive. We don't know their background. They could be terrorists. They could be criminals. I don't want them looking after my mother if she's in care. Would you? Would you? And why hasn't this been commonly known? Did you know about this?
No.
A terrorist looking after our parents.
Well, that could happen.
But they probably wouldn't come down the migrant route. These terrorists would probably come
because they have the choice about working as well. So it's people who actually want to work rather than hanging around.
Well, you've got the
if you were going to be a terrorist, and because you're already in the country, you'd go and be a terrorist. You wouldn't go and work in a care home at the same time.
Well, that's all right then.
But it's
I mean, it's not comforting because we should be processing the applications so much faster.
But of course they should, and that's what the problem is with migrants waiting over 2 years to be actually processed is absolutely disgusting. And the thing is, though, it's shortening our own labour because they're being hard. I spoke to a builder friend of mine, and he's really disgusted with this because he said, "Who's going to, employ me when someone will do it for much cheaper?"
Well, Rakib did point that out, that it will undercut the actual labour market. So you end up with the same thing you had with the EU, except for these are asylum seekers now.
That's why I think it's important. I mean, I think first, Liz is absolutely right. It's outrageous the government has been keeping this quiet, literally. Only freedom of information requests, and I think the Telegraph this week and yesterday, in fact, covered them. But what we need to know is that they're going into areas of the economy where they're not going to undercut. So particularly,
construction,
construction is more dangerous. I think agriculture they should be focused on, where we've seen that there are literally huge shortages because they can't get people to pick things in the fields.
This is a shambolic mess. The Home Office is a shambolic mess.
I agree with that.
And you know what? You've got to stick by the rules. People are coming over here illegally. That means they're criminals. I'm sorry. The government needs to get themselves into action. It's all talk and waffle, no action, and process them.
But they've come up with some action, though. The thing is, though, it seems that every time they're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. Every time they come up with one plan that would potentially save us money in terms of their hotel bills and all then everyone's saying, oh, no, they can't do that. So what would you have them doing? Because we haven't got the solution to the processing more quickly.
We don't know who these are.
So you just keep paying for them in the hotels.
The first order of any government is to look after its own people.
Yeah, that's true.
This is not being looked after, and it's not right that we're paying $8 million a day in hotels.
Well, that's why some of them
because
will
I
get
would
back
say
if they're working.
To send them back to the UK territories like South Georgia, the Falklands, do a detention centre and get them processed within days and send them back. And if they're legitimately fleeing from a war-torn country, which isn't France, by the way, then yes, let them stay. But otherwise,
the Falklands, I don't know what the population of is in the Falklands and places like that. But they probably wouldn't. How many? It's a few thousand.
3,000, I think. Yeah,
20,000. Well, they would overrun the Falklands, wouldn't they? And the people in the Falklands wouldn't want them there either.
There are other UK territories they could go to. We need to do something. This isn't the right solution. And I know, because I've had so many calls as soon as this news broke, saying, number one, they didn't know about it. MPs didn't know about this. And people are seriously worried, and I can totally understand
There's certainly going to be a lot of questions about it
There are other countries, so I think in the United States, people can work. There are other countries, although, having said that, you've seen the problem America are having with this 10,000 people coming in a day from their borders. So I'm in two minds with it, because I think, yes, it would be great if you could get people to work and do some of those jobs, but then, rather than them costing us, but I'm not sure whether it'll actually save us money anyway.
Well, look about the language barriers, the cultural barriers, all the other things that go into it, and the strain this is putting on our infrastructure, on our housing, on our schools,
I think we all agree
everything
that we
else.
want them processed
And they
much faster.
They could just
That's why
go
Labour's got a plan.
disappearing into the economy. Let's look at this realistically.
Yeah.
This is not safe.
Well, they've already
and
disappeared.
It's not well
Lizzie,
to do.
Lizzie, they've already disappeared
And
out of
do
the
you know what? I want to
5,000.
know why we weren't told about
No,
this.
I agree with you. I want to know that
really
too.
do.
Well, you know, you can't keep this secret because people think there's a conspiracy.
Well, there obviously clearly is some sort of conspiracy. And remember, out of the 5,000 migrants that they had, they had 700 that they could find. I mean, that's embarrassing. So I don't really know the answer to that, but I think, in my view, they just need to process them faster so they're not here for a year, so that doesn't materialise.
Exactly.
But let's see what my panel will make of that. I'm joined by you guys, and thank you for that. I'm repeating myself. But this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show. Tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Let's go to Bristol. The map is here.
Oh.
Yes. Heads won't roll, which is good. Let's speak to Lee Harris. He's a great British voice. Lee, what do you think?
Oh, it seems utterly mad to me, Nana. You know, not if we want to stop the boat, so no is the answer. You know, the government have been rightly telling us, along with the National Crime Agency, that we need an effective working deterrent. You know, if we want any chance of stopping this appalling, dangerous, criminal trade of human life. People are dying in the Channel. It's a huge security risk. It's costing this country billions, and it's fundamentally not fair. It doesn't take a genius to work out. This is where I depart from what Matthew was saying, although I like Matthew, but he's just completely ignoring the pull factor. It doesn't take a genius to work out that an effective deterrent needs to be part of an overall strategy, and at the moment there isn't one. And the pull factor is already huge. Even France have been complaining that the UK is far too generous to illegal migrants, and it's making matters worse. The message is, come to the UK legally on a small boat, you'll get jobs and free or very cheap accommodation subsidised by the taxpayer. If they are serious about deterrence, this would be stopped immediately. It's also a huge security risk, especially for jobs being offered to illegal migrants in the care sector. You know, we don't know who a lot of these people are. It was only November last year that security services alerted us to a manhunt that had been launched to try and locate 6 terror suspects that arrived on small boats. And, you know, the other thing I'd say is this is a cynical attempt to clear the backlog, and yet another example of the government not being serious about stopping the boats and controlling our borders. It's thoroughly depressing. You know, it's another broken promise by Rishi Sunak. And what I find...
Listen, they're all just, I don't know, I think they're breaking every promise. I mean, flip-flops. Doesn't he? Rishi Sunak, he's not really reached any of his promises. He's just a little bit too short to reach them. But he hasn't, he hasn't reached any of his promises. And then you've got Reform, who are doing... I just don't know where we go with this, Lee Harris. I really don't. But it's really good to talk to you. Thank you very much. That is Lee Harris. He's our great British voice. Lovely to talk to you. Crikey, so what do you think at home? Come on, give me your thoughts. GBViews@gbnews.com. I'll read some of those. But coming up, it's this week's Difficult Conversation. Danielle Mason, sister of EastEnders star Jessie Wallace, will be live in the studio. We'll be talking about living with anxiety and claustrophobia. She faced her worst nightmare when she was once trapped in a lift. We'll be discussing that. But first, let's get some weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News weather. We've got Storm Isha on the way, particularly through Sunday evening, overnight into Monday morning, damaging gusts of wind, some large waves around the coast, some heavy rain too. It's unsettled over the next 24 hours and very unsettled Sunday into Monday as that storm moves through, and then it remains unsettled into next week too. Outbreaks of heavy rain already pushing in this evening across western parts of the UK, some hail mixed in there too, very strong and gusty winds, gales around the coast, but starting to ease a little during the early hours with some clear spells developing, but also some blustery showers too. Temperatures, well, generally frost-free, which we haven't seen for a while, 4 to 6 Celsius across many areas. A mixed start to Sunday morning, some bright spells, the best of these across north-east Scotland, also central southern parts of England, but then Storm Isha moves in during the Latter part of the morning through the afternoon, bringing outbreaks of heavy rain. Very strong winds developing, particularly as we head into the evening time and overnight. 60, 70, locally 80 miles an hour. Met Office amber warnings come in force for Sunday evening. The afternoon temperatures above average for the time of year, but given the strengthening winds, it will feel cooler than this. Blustery, unsettled start to Monday. Some disruption to the morning commute. Warnings in force across the board for those strong winds. It remains unsettled.
Weather on GB News.
So coming up in the next hour, the Great British Debate in that hour. I'm asking, is the move to net zero a false economy? But next, it's time for my weekly roundup with royal biographer Angela Levin.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, welcome on board. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now, there's always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different. And each Saturday, I like to give you a rundown, and who better to do so than royal biographer Angela Levin. Angela,
Hello. It's been a busy week.
Busy week for the royals, hasn't it?
Yes, it's been a very busy week.
Well, where should we start?
Well, I think start with the King, because I think it's...
Let's work our way down.
Yeah.
To the bottom. Harry.
I think he was extraordinary to say exactly what he had. And it was to actually get people, if they were concerned about their symptoms, to go and see a doctor. And the charity, the prostate cancer charity, say that it's 101% more people have come onto them to ask about their care and what they should do. And that's in a day. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. And so you must feel, even though it's a bit squeezy...
No, don't say that. That's the wrong word, Suzanne.
Okay.
I don't think I've squeezed one, really.
No, but it's actually very proud. I think it's marvellous of him to do that. And so, you know, I hope he will be very well. And Queen Camilla said that he's fine and he's itching to get back to work. So he can't feel that well at the moment because he's a man who works every single day except Christmas Day. So if he's not doing any work, he's actually stopped. He can't be feeling all that well. But I think that, you know, it's really possibly anxiety and being extra careful. And then he'll come back full of beans and everything quite quickly.
Yeah, and obviously he's the king, so we have to take extra care over the king.
Yes.
So let's, should we go straight to the bottom or somewhere in the middle?
Well, let's talk about Prince Harry now,
bottom.
because there's a contrast, very much so. I mean, he's won this ridiculous award of being one of the most amazing people flying that the world has ever known. And he was there yesterday evening to take the award, and John Travolta was there to give it to him. And he said, do you remember when you danced with my mother? I was only one, and look at us now. I expect you're still going to celebrate it every night with about what happened that you danced with her, which is a bit of a ludicrous thing, but maybe. But what I thought was that it was quite phony because he was trying to make joke after joke after joke, and he didn't mention once about his father or his sister-in-law, who he said for years was the sister he'd always wanted. I felt he could have just said, you know, oh, it was a shock to hear that, I wish them well. A sentence. But to ignore it and be super happy, I felt was actually saying, I'm completely independent, it doesn't affect me, I'm fine. I thought that wasn't...
But that's the elephant in the room every time he says anything, isn't it? Everyone's thinking, yeah, but what about your family? I mean, he doesn't get off with that either. He doesn't get off scot-free with that, even though he might think he's not mentioned it. I think every time he does that, he diminishes himself a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. But I think when you've got two people of your family who are unwell and it's quite a shock, a sentence wouldn't have hurt. Well, meanwhile, he is suing the Home Office for when he's here. So he's actually keeping quite a strong link. He didn't win. He's got to pay nearly £1 million to the Mail on Sunday and also to his own lawyers. But actually, it's very interesting because he will be very, very upset because he said in ITV when his Spare book came out that his main aim in his life is to make the UK press, you know, proper. You know, he doesn't like what they want, and that's his thing in life. And he'll be very upset that he hasn't done that. Of course, it's nonsense. You can't have somebody living in USA who's actually trying to manoeuvre the press. But this was more important than you can imagine, more even than the money. This is something that he wanted to get. And I want to tell you very quickly two things that I've read in Robert Hardman's book. I went to the celebration on Thursday night, which was terrific. And one of the things was that when the kids went on the balcony, they would be told very strictly, don't pick your nose and don't yawn. So they had to remember, those are two things they had to remember absolutely. And the Queen's last red box, we know, she'd left a list for awards, 2 letters, one for Prince Charles and one then King Charles, and one for her aide. And it was immaculately done. Well, the one that was 1952, the first piece of official business was she had to sign something about the Commissioner of Metropolitan Police who had behaved very badly sexually.
Really?
And
Gosh,
very hard for a young woman in her early 20s.
Where have you taken into this place? Well, we've only got a few seconds left. Angela Levin, thank you very much and goodbye. That's Angela Levin, royal biographer. This is GB News. More to come in the next hour. It's 5 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board. If you've just tuned in, we are live on TV, online and on digital radio for the next hour. Me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. Coming up, my difficult conversation. I'll be speaking to Danielle Mason on her life, family and living with claustrophobia and anxiety. And then for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is the move to net zero a false economy? But first, let's get your latest news with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. It's 5 o'clock. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Norfolk Police has referred itself to the independent watchdog in relation to the deaths of 4 members of the same family on Friday. The force says it did not respond to an emergency 999 call made about an hour before the bodies of a 45-year-old man, a 36-year-old woman and 2 girls were discovered at a house in Cossey near Norwich. All 4 were found with injuries. The force had already referred itself to the watchdog after officers were called to the same address last month as part of a missing person inquiry. The police say that will now be re-examined. A speech by the Shadow Foreign Secretary calling for a ceasefire in Gaza has been interrupted by pro-Palestinian protesters. David Lammy had to dash backstage when a woman jumped on to the platform and called for him to condemn the genocide in Gaza, shouting how many more children need to die. After the Free Palestine activists were escorted away, more people in the audience stood up to launch verbal attacks on Labour's stance on the Middle East conflict. In his speech, Mr Lammy went on to express support for a Palestinian state when the war ends. He says everyone wants to see a sustainable ceasefire.
The situation in Gaza is intolerable and unbearable. Too many children, women, old people have lost their lives. We need a truce now so that humanitarian aid can get in. We need a sustainable ceasefire. I'm hugely worried about what I'm hearing from UK aid agencies and from the United Nations and the medical attention that over 60,000 people who are now wounded or maimed need. We must get urgent aid in.
Well, meanwhile, the US president has suggested a 2-state solution remains a possibility in the Middle East. Joe Biden spoke to Israel's prime minister on Friday, a day after Benjamin Netanyahu rejected US calls for the establishment of a Palestinian state once the war ends. However, following their conversation on Friday, President Biden now says Mr Netanyahu is not opposed to all versions of the proposal, suggesting one path could involve a non-militarised government. 2 British Royal Navy ships have been involved in a collision in a port in Bahrain. No one was injured in the accident. An investigation has been opened. The Royal Navy is working with the US Navy in the Gulf region to protect Red Sea shipping from increasing attacks by Houthi forces based in Yemen. Mail deliveries on Saturdays could become a thing of the past as Ofcom looked into the ways of reforming the postal service. A spokesperson for the regulator told GB News they will publish a document next week on how Royal Mail can evolve to meet changing customer needs. It comes as the company faces losses of £319 million for the first half of this financial year. Ofcom says it's ultimately for the government to decide if any changes to the postal service are implemented. Tata Steel's pledged a £130 million support package to help workers retrain or find new jobs as it plans to close furnaces at its Port Talbot site. Up to 2,800 jobs will be affected over the next 18 months as the company transitions to what they say is a greener way of working. However, unions are warning the move will be devastating for the economy and the steel industry. Now, if you thought your shopping bags were a little lighter at the moment, it could be because more and more products are getting smaller. Mouthwash, tea bags and sausages are amongst the supermarket staples that have been downsized thanks to so-called shrinkflation as manufacturers look to cut costs. Now, that's according to the consumer watchdog Which. They found Listerine's Fresh Burst mouthwash shrank by 100 millilitres, despite its price on Tesco shelves going up by 52 pence. It means shoppers paid 21% more for 17% less. Meanwhile, some varieties of PG Tips used to contain 180 tea bags, while now at many supermarkets, you're only going to get 140. And a bit more shrinkflation of a different kind. A six-legged dog found abandoned in a car park has had her extra limbs removed. Ariel, a spaniel puppy, was found in Pembroke's town centre in September last year with a curious birth defect. She had 6 legs. Well, after a fundraising appeal that raised £15,000, her surplus limbs were safely removed. The dog was taken in by Greenacres Rescue Charity and is now being cared for by a foster family. We're live across the UK on TV, on digital radio, and if you want us on your smart speaker, just say play GB News. Now it's over to Nana.
Thank you, Aaron. It's fast approaching 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Still to come, my difficult conversation today is with Danielle Mason. Now, she's a mum, TV personality. She was actually on my Big Fat Gypsy Wedding. She's a presenter and also the sister of EastEnders star and former Page 3 model. She'll be telling me about living with anxiety and claustrophobia. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is the move to net zero a false economy? As Tata Steel announced closures affecting 2,800 jobs across the UK, and replacing its blast furnaces at Port Talbot with an electric arc furnace. I'll be asking, is the move to net zero a false economy? And as ever, you can get in touch. Email gbviews@gbnews.com and tweet me at gbnews. So it's time now for this week's difficult conversation. Now, I'm joined by a familiar face. She's a versatile personality and a true trendsetter. She's TV presenter Danielle Mason, and she's part of reality shows. She's done quite a few of them. My Big Fat Gypsy Wedding. She worked as a model and is the half-sister of Jessie Wallace, who is famous for her role as Cat Slater in EastEnders. Now, Danielle has claustrophobia and anxiety, but bravely faced her fears after being stuck in a lift in Abu Dhabi, but battled through and re-entered a lift later that same day. Now, a lot of people don't think much of claustrophobia. A lot of people don't understand what it's like, but for those who suffer from it, it is really debilitating. And I'm joined now, pleased to say, by TV presenter Danielle Mason. Danielle, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, lovely to have you on. Now, let's just start with you, because a lot of people would have seen you on... You've been on ITV, you've been on other shows where you've discussed and panel stuff.
Yes.
But you were also in My Big Fat Gypsy Wedding about 10 years.
Quite a long time ago now. I think we're talking about 12 years ago. Yeah, so it was a long time ago. I was presenting an MMA show and I met my other half there and I ended up having children, got asked to do the show and I did it, and then obviously went on to do other things. So yeah.
So you're the show that you're presenting. The person that you met. He was a gypsy, I presume. Or...
Yes, he was from the traveller community.
What was that like? Because did you live as a gypsy?
Well, yeah, I was part of the community because obviously I was with one, and my children are half. So yeah, it was very, very different to what I'm used to.
In what way? Because I'm sure a lot of people will be wondering, what's it like?
Well, you know, I'm quite a career woman, so it was very, you know, you've got to kind of take a back seat with the men, do the housework and the cooking and the cleaning and things like that. But I think the community's changed a lot. I think the women are very different now. So it has changed since I was part of it.
And then doing the show and getting married during this thing?
Yes.
What was that like?
It was very well. They actually came to. I never got married.
You didn't get married?
No, we didn't get married. But obviously, I had my child, and it was about my child, my eldest Rudy, who's half traveller and half. They call it Gorgia. It was about how our differences come together as a family. And then, obviously, I had Rudy and the film crew were there. It was really intense. It was not really an ideal situation when you're in that much pain. But,
you had a baby in the caravan?
No.
Well, you said that.
In hospital.
Well, you said that, I thought.
No, in hospital, yeah. So, but, I mean, the show did really well. It had, like, 15 million viewers, like, more than X Factor and that at the time. So it was just bang, 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 bang. But I had been in the industry previously doing Page 3 for The Sun as I was younger. But now, obviously, as time's gone on, I've moved on to presenting, I've moved on to other things.
Page 3,
yeah.
that's back in the day.
That was some time ago.
That would never be allowed now for the woke mindset that has suddenly emerged. You wouldn't be allowed to do that now, would you?
I don't think so, no.
But what was that like, doing that?
Well, I was very young at the time. I think I started when I was 21. And it was really good. I got to travel the world. I got to meet loads of people. I got to model different clothes as well off the back of it. Was doing a lot of publications. So, yeah, it was good fun. I was young. It was good at that time.
Yeah, because a lot of people have come through that and done some great things with their career.
Yes,
it was a door opener, wasn't it, really?
Yes, it was a door opener, yeah.
A lot of people sort of look down on it, but actually you're in charge of your own destiny. You choose to do it.
Yeah.
And it's brought you to, you know, to do all the things that you're doing
You've
now.
got some big names that have come from Page 3. You've got Melinda Messenger, she does the DIY presenting. You've got... Is it Lucinda Lazardi?
I don't know whether she did. I think she did, actually.
Yeah, she does present in TV shows. There's quite a
Sam
few,
Smith,
yeah.
Sam Smith, one of them, anyway. Not Sam Smith, not the musicians. Do you remember? God, no. So now, though, I wanted to talk about claustrophobia and sort of anxiety, because a lot of people suffer with claustrophobia. I mean, thankfully I don't, but I could imagine what it would be like, because every now and again we all probably suffer a level of it.
Yeah.
When did you realise that you were claustrophobic?
I think I started from the age of 6, but I didn't know what was wrong with me. It was like a panic attack, fear that would come over me. And I remember I used to say to my mum, I don't feel right, like, I just don't feel well. I feel, like, really scared, but I could never work it out. And it wasn't until I was about 18 where I went on a flight to Mexico and I was just so unwell on this flight and I didn't know what it was, but I just felt panicked. I felt like I was going to die. And it was all... Now I've come to learn about it. It's all about, like, being in a small space, not being able to control that environment, not being able to get off when you want to. And it's the same with lifts, flights, trains, anything with an electric door that I'm not in control of. It makes me panic, but people find it really embarrassing to talk about. But there's actually so many people that have some sort of a panic disorder, whether it be claustrophobic, some sort of OCD, things like that, yeah.
And how have you managed it?
So I went through a stage where I was avoiding situations, so I'd avoid traffic jams because it was all about being stuck, avoid lifts. No, I'm taking the stairs, even if it was the top of the Shard, I would probably walk. Avoid flying. And it got to a point where I was like, this is actually controlling my life now, and I want to do things. I want to be going travelling again. Like, I want to be having a good time and making the most of my life, because you only live once. So I come to the decision that I was going to get therapy. So I had therapy. I went to the doctors and I got some tablets that I take every day. I still take them now, called fluoxetine, which is for anxiety disorder.
Obviously, your doctor prescribed this for you.
Yes, my doctor prescribed them,
If
yeah.
anyone is suffering from anxiety and these things, that's the first place to go, right?
Yes, so I had
to get an appointment.
Yeah, if you can get an appointment.
It is, isn't it, literally?
Yeah, very hard. The tablets that I was prescribed, they actually put that bit of...
so they help you?
What is it? Because with anxiety disorder, it's something that's missing out of your brain. You're not getting enough...
I don't know, I'm not sure.
Oxytocin?
Is it oxytocin?
Is it that?
Is oxytocin,
Dopamine.
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 Oxytocin's the pleasure hormone, or the pleasure one there.
Oh, oops.
So because when you have a baby, apparently we have lots of oxytocin, so you can't feel the pain, which then makes you forget how bad it is, and then you do it again.
Yeah. So it puts that little bit back in that you're missing, which is honestly, there's thousands and thousands, millions of people that suffer with it, and your brain doesn't think, because I mean, before I was taking it, my brain would go into overdrive, thinking.
Now you're able to manage it.
Yeah, now I go flying. I mean, I went off to Abu Dhabi with the girls last month. I'm going everywhere at the moment.
Was that when you got trapped in the lift, or was that?
Yeah, I got trapped in the lift in Abu Dhabi.
Oh God, you're the last person who got trapped in the lift.
Yeah,
all the people.
So,
how did you manage that?
No, I freaked out. I absolutely freaked out. So I was all excited because I thought, I've done this big trip on my own with the girls, like I've gone on the aeroplane, and then I was getting really cocky in this hotel. I was getting really cocky and I was like, I'm going to go in the lift on my own because I'd had a couple of cocktails. I went in it and I was like, stuck between two floors. I literally, my legs went to jelly. It felt like about an hour, but it was only 5 minutes. I got out, I literally crawled out the lift and I was crying to this, to this Arab lady, and I was like, oh. And she helped me out the lift, and then I literally took the staircase the rest of the way up.
To be honest with you, though, I think a lot of people would be crawling on the floor if they got trapped in a lift. I think lifts can be quite scary.
Yeah.
So even though I go in the lift and I'm confident in the lift, I think to myself, you always think, if the worst case scenario, what do you do in a lift? You can't really do anything. So I get the feeling.
Yeah.
I think everyone has a level of it, but you just manage it. I think that's what that is.
Mine's just 10 times worse than everyone else's. I just overthink everything. And that's where, going to the doctors helped me, because it put that little bit back, whatever's missing, when you've got these anxiety disorders, and it stops you from thinking that way.
Well,
so that's
Now, I'm good to hear that there is something that people can use to help them. And you also have a cleaning business, I understand.
So I do good housekeeping as well, and I go off to go to different houses and things like that, and do Ideal Home Show, which I've just been booked again to do in March. I did it last year. I have my own shows there, which I produce and present and show the audience all these cleaning hacks. And I took it to the shopping channel as well.
That's
Ideal
great.
World, yeah.
So give us a good cleaning hack that can help.
I always swear by Fairy Liquid on glass tables with microfiber cloths. So I wouldn't use any other cloths apart from microfiber cloths. And Fairy Liquid is my #1 for cleaning windows and glass.
Obviously, there are other...
and then dry it out. You get no smears.
There are other brands that you could do. This presumably works with all sorts of different...
yes. Yeah.
That's all right. No, but, that's perhaps your one of choice, but there are others. And so you just literally put the washing up liquid on a bit of microfiber and scrub it. No water.
Froth it, with a bit of water. Froth it up. And then take your dry microfiber, and just dry it off, and it's smear-free.
Wow.
I swear by that one.
I bet your house is... I once went out with this guy, well, not for long, it didn't last long at all, because you come out of the shower and he goes, don't forget to use the thingy thing. You have to do that and get any water droplets off there and all. I thought, sorry, this won't last.
Yeah.
Have you got one of those in your shower?
No, I don't, actually.
You don't do that?
No. I don't do that. You should always dry it down, though, because that stops you getting the limescale watermarks.
I won't be doing that. I don't do that at all.
Yeah, no.
But I bet your house is really pristine.
No,
really.
it's not. I've got 2 kids that are running around causing me mayhem. My house is not pristine, no.
All right. Well, listen, what's your next project? What's the next thing you're doing?
So I've got Ideal Home Show. I do different bits of TV work with another channel sometimes, and... just my presenting stuff.
Well, lovely. Well, listen, don't forget to look up Danielle. She's got her Twitter and everything else like that. The usual places. Danielle Mason, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Right, well, it's just coming up to 19 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. Coming up, we'll be getting stuck into my minute debate. I'm asking whether Conservatives, should they cut inheritance tax or should they cut income tax? Which one? What do you think? But up next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is the move to net zero a false economy?
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? Well, it's fast approaching 23 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Don't forget, you can also stream the show live on YouTube. But it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is the move to net zero a false economy? Because in the heart of Port Talbot, the steelworks isn't just an industry. It's described as the pulse of the town, providing a wonderful economy and livelihoods for a significant portion of the community. And the recent announcements of job losses of up to 2,500 by Tata Steel is a devastating blow to this Welsh town. The repercussions extend far beyond the immediate job losses, affecting the entire local ecosystem, from cafes and shops to the fabric of daily life. Very tragic news. All of this is in the pursuit of net zero. Zero emissions, zero carbon. It's been criticised for being a false economy. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is the move to net zero a false economy? Well, joining me to discuss, I've got Brian Catt, physicist, engineer, Donach McCarthy, Director of Climate Media Coalition, Tom Burke, who's the chairman of E3G and a government advisor on climate change between 2006 to 12. I'm going to start with you, Tom. If you could give us a little bit of background as to why we are pursuing this net zero, what does it all mean? Because some people may not fully understand it yet.
Well, it means avoiding dangerous climate change, which will destroy our economy. But even more, urgently than that, it means being part of the a really much more smart and efficient road to economic prosperity in the future. So that's what it's about. It's about doing things better as well as making things safer.
Is the suffering, though, really, do the ends justify the means? We're looking at job losses and having to rely on foreign providers for really strong steel.
Well, we've got two issues here. Should we avoid relying on others' pieces of strong steel? Absolutely. But that's an economic issue. That's not an environmental issue.
Well, it is really, because if you're transporting steel, then aren't you probably going to be using a lot of carbon to do that, aren't you? Or
no, I'm agreeing with you. Sorry, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good idea for us to be able to have our own production of strong steel. I think that's absolutely right. But that's not why we're shutting down Port Talbot. We're shutting down Port Talbot because one of the big refineries is at the end of its life, and another one of the smelters there needs to be replaced so that we can meet our commitments under climate change. But the real primary reason we're shutting it down is because the government's decided it doesn't want to go on supporting Tata Steel to invest in steel in this country, which it's been doing for the last 20 or 30 years.
So I think, to me, that sounds like a very bad idea. But let's see what Donald Akua...
What do you think sounds like a bad idea, Nana? I'm not sure what you think's a bad idea.
Well, no, I think it's a bad idea having to rely on foreign providers to make really...
Well, I agree with you.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's what a bad idea is. I'm just telling you. You said you're not sure.
Let's produce the clean green steel that we know how to do, that the markets in the future are going to want. We're not going to take old coal-fired produced steel. Let's produce that now. Let's get on with investing in producing that.
As I understand it, this kind of steel that it will produce wouldn't be able to do the solid, strong steel. It's a weaker steel. Brian Catt, if you could confirm, what kind of steel is it? Let me ask. I'm going to go to Brian. I'll come back to you. Brian Catt. I mean, am I right? Am I wrong?
I'm not exactly sure what steels they are making. Certainly, if they're making high carbon steels, they have to be made with coking coal, as we've discussed this before with the Cumbrian mine, if you remember. It's just completely bonkers to take steel production away from the UK. If you're going to shut it down because it's come to the end of its useful life, for instance, then you need to have something there to replace it with. And for a large developed economy, not to have steel manufacturing, which is inherently energy intensive, where does the electricity come from? Tell me, I'm quite interested to know that. Then you're not a developed economy anymore. You need cheap, plentiful energy available to make things like steel.
So what's the difference between steel that we created within this electric furnace or whatever it is and steel that we normally make with coking coal, as you said? What's the difference?
Are you asking me?
Brian.
Yeah. The short answer to that is I don't have enough details to answer your question properly. What I do know is the only way you make the high carbon steel that I'm aware of is that you make it using coal, and the actual coking coal is part of the chemical reaction. The carbon from the coking coal goes into the steel, and it's quite a craft process. Obviously they do measurements, but basically it's taken a long time to figure out how to make high carbon steel, and that's the way you do it. I don't know.
Okay, let's go to Donald McCarthy.
Done electrically.
Donald McCarthy, is this a good idea? What's happening? Is it a good idea?
Tom is correct. The reason why the plant is closed has come to the end of its economic life. It's losing £1 million a day. That's 360 million a year, and that's why it's closing. The actual fact that we're investing in an electric arc plant there means that it will be green steel, but it actually will save those jobs. Those jobs would go completely if we didn't invest in this green steel that the government's investing in, which, I'm a critic of the government often, but I will praise them for doing this. However, what you're right, is the other type of steel that's made from scrap. From scratch. We will not be making that. What we should be doing is that the Swedes started doing this in 2021. Making it using green hydrogen is what you use making steel from scratch. And what we're doing in the United Kingdom, we're wasting £1 billion of electricity every year, dumping the excess wind energy, which should be going to making green hydrogen to form our steel. And that's what we now need to do going forward. But the other point that's interesting to me about this plant in Wales is that currently, Nana, we export nearly all of our scrap steel. We export it to the European Union. They melt it, they refine it, and we re-import it back here. And that will stop. We will stop exporting our scrap steel, and we will melt it in Wales, creating those green jobs.
I see. So
that's a positive.
So that's a positive. But then why is there such a hoo-ha about this? Is it that people don't understand that? Or why is there such a energy against this? People are furious about this. Has anyone got any...
The reason why is...
Well, Donica's right. An important point here. The steel you make from the furnace that's proposed to be developed there is not the primary steel that you need for doing all the big structural things, shipbuilding, all of the big things. But what Donica's also saying is quite important, which I think we weren't being told the correct before. You can make that kind of steel without using coking coal to do it. You make it by using hydrogen in order to create the reduction of the iron ore to steel. You use hydrogen instead. Now, we currently throw away about £500 million worth a year of electricity from the North Sea because we haven't built the links to get it to the south. But you could use that electricity to electrolyze water, make hydrogen, and make the steel. Now, you can't do it overnight, so you're not going to do that tomorrow. But what you're really missing out in here is a government which has a strategy about how to make sure we're not only producing steel for our own purposes, but also steel that will be available and be sellable into global markets in the future.
But as you said about the infrastructure, if they're going to do that and make the tough steel that we need and using hydrogen, you just said that there's no infrastructure really to do that at all. Brian Catt.
Well, I'm very interested to know chemically how you're going to...
Hang on 1 second, he's laughing. Why are you laughing, Tom? That's what I've taken from what you said. Am I wrong? Have I misinterpreted you?
I said right. I was very clear. We don't have the grid infrastructure to move the electricity from the offshore to shore. That's just because we've got a bad industrial policy. And what you do...
So I'm right. We don't have the infrastructure. I'm right then. So what
we don't have the infrastructure to move the electricity. Well, it's only that... Sorry, no. What I was explaining to you was we have plenty of electricity that we're not using, that we could be using to make hydrogen, actually in England and Wales, in the south, if you like, if we invest in that infrastructure. And with that hydrogen, we can reduce iron ore, which is iron oxide, by taking the oxygen off, using hydrogen instead of carbon.
And we have and my point was that you were saying that we don't have the facility to do that right now. Is that what you were saying?
That's exactly right, because we don't know
why you're laughing. Brian Catt, final word to you, 30 seconds. Brian, to you, 30 seconds.
Easy one. I'd like to know how hydrogen molecules replace carbon molecules in the high-carbon steel, because it just doesn't make any sense at all. Second of all...
Let him finish. Sorry, carry on, Brian.
I let them talk for long enough. The other point is if you want to get plentiful energy available on demand, the only reason it's wasted is because it's generated when it's not wanted and it isn't generated when it is. What you need to do is to put more nuclear power on the core grid, not connect cables all over the environment.
Well, this is a lot of people listening.
May or may not be worth.
This all sounds great, but a lot of people won't understand a word you guys are saying. It's very technical, so that's why I was trying to decipher it to make sure that people understood what I'm saying. OK, so, listen, I've got to go to the news. I could talk to you guys for ages. OK, you've got 10 seconds. Go, because they're going to get me in trouble. Quickly.
There are 43,000 jobs. There are 43,000 jobs in the renewable energy industry. It's a big win for British jobs.
Yeah, but they're not. But those jobs aren't available now. So you tell that to the 2,800 people who've lost their jobs now. That doesn't work. Thank you. Listen, thank you so much to Brian Catt, Donald McCarthy, and also Tom Burke. Interesting. Very technical. But to me, all it sounds like is that you can't make the strong kind of steel that we need, and they're closing down the plant. And that is pretty much that. To me, that is the basic message there. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is the move to net zero a false economy? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also former Labour advisor Matthew Larson. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
It's 5:33. Good evening to you. Aaron Armstrong here in the GB Newsroom. A speech by the Shadow Foreign Secretary calling for a ceasefire in Gaza has been interrupted by pro-Palestinian protesters. David Lammy had to dash backstage when a woman jumped on the platform and called for him to condemn genocide in Gaza, shouting, "How many more children need to die?" After the Free Palestine Coalition activists were escorted away, more people in the audience stood up to launch verbal attacks on Labour's stance on the Middle East conflict. Mr. Lammy went on to express support for a Palestinian state when the war ends, saying everyone wants to see a sustainable ceasefire. Meanwhile, the US president suggests that a two-state solution may still be a possibility in the Middle East. Joe Biden spoke to Israel's Prime Minister on Friday, a day after Benjamin Netanyahu rejected US calls for the establishment of a Palestinian state once the war ends. However, following their conversation on Friday, President Biden now says Mr. Netanyahu is not opposed to all versions of the proposal. Norfolk Police has referred itself to the independent watchdog in relation to the deaths of 4 members of the same family on Friday. The force says it did not respond to an emergency call made about an hour before the bodies of a 45-year-old man, a 36-year-old woman and 2 girls were discovered at a house near Norwich. All 4 were found with injuries. Mail deliveries on Saturdays could become a thing of the past as Ofcom looks into ways of reforming the postal service. A spokesperson for the regulator told GB News they will publish a document next week on how Royal Mail can evolve to meet changing customer needs. It comes as the company faces losses of £319 million for the first half of the financial year. Ofcom says it's ultimately for the government to decide if any changes to the service are implemented. And railway lines across Scotland will close early tomorrow as Storm Isha brings severe conditions to the country. Network Rail says several lines will be out of use from 7 p.m, that is, on Sunday. And the rain warning extends across the whole of Scotland with an amber wind warning in place until Monday morning. The storm is expected to bring winds of up to 80 miles an hour in some places, with coastal areas particularly at risk. More on all of our stories, as always, on our website, gbnews.com. Now it's back to Nana.
Well, I've just got a couple of emails that I just wanted to read out. Linny says we need only to follow the money to see who actually benefits from climate issues. 2,800 job losses in Port Talbot. Steelworks are just a drop in the ocean of the costs the public are paying for. Della says, Nana, unless China, India and others reduce their emissions at the same time as Britain, then we are punishing ourselves in vain. And I'll just read one more from Jackie. She said, it is imperative that we keep and create our quality steel production here in the UK. We cannot be importing it from China. The lot in power are insane. Labour and, God forbid, the Lib Dems or Greens will see us off. Well, listen, coming up with the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt set to release a package of pre-election tax cuts. I'm asking, should the Conservatives cut inheritance tax or income tax? Plus my great British debate this hour. I'm asking, is the move to net zero a false economy? Get in touch, gbnews@gbnews.com.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon. It's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking you, basically, what do you think? Is the move to net zero a false economy? Because in the heart of Port Talbot, this is the steelworks, there is an industry, a steel industry, and this isn't just some industry, it's actually the pulse of the town. It provides livelihoods for a significant portion of the community, and we've recently had the announcements that 2,500 could lose their jobs because Tata Steel, they're the guys who make that steel, have set a devastating blow to the town, and that they'll be closing or changing the way they make the steel, which means the repercussions extend beyond just job losses. They affect the entire local ecosystem, from cafes, shops and everything else that's sort of woven into the fabric of the community. So it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is the move to net zero a false economy? Joining me now, my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also former Labour advisor Matthew Laza. Lizzie Cundy, what do you think?
The misery of net zero is now impossible to ignore when we've seen what's happened to Port Talbot. I mean, we were one of the pioneers of making steel. Now we've got to rely on other produce. And quite rightly, what you said, how is this going to help net zero? Well, transporting steel and everything else. And when will we learn that net zero is doing nothing but hurting our own economy? We are 1.1% in carbon emissions. Why aren't we putting all our energy into convincing countries like China, who are in the 30s, America, that is 24%, India, that is 12%? Why aren't we doing that? And all it is doing is hurting us, and especially the most vulnerable and poorest. I mean, take, for example, I was in Wimbledon last week. The bus explodes with the electric bus. I couldn't believe it. And it's happening with cars. They're having to rebuild car parks because the cars are too heavy, electric cars, to hold them. We're having to redo our bridges. Honestly, I'm sorry. We've got to look at what this really is about, and we're only hurting ourselves.
But I will say this, because when you talk, you offer China and India and people like that. The problem is, all we're doing is we're offsetting our carbon. So the reason why we're saying, oh, we're only 1% is because it's 1% that's recorded in this country. But let's be honest, the elephant in the room is that we are using more than that, but we are offsetting it elsewhere. They're producing, they're doing all the manufacturing.
Well, I think that's the key problem. So, I mean, yeah, absolutely. You're just, if you don't make anything, you don't use that much carbon.
Exactly.
But if you buy things, somebody else is using the carbon to make it. I half agree with Lizzie. I mean, this is an absolute tragedy for Port Talbot. One of my very best friends is from just up the valley in a small village. It will rip the heart out of that community. But also, it will rip the heart out of our country's capacity to do things that we need to do, because we were the only major economy in the world, in Germany, France, Spain, the US, we'll all be able to make virgin steel. We won't be able to do it, and this is the stuff that you need to do to make battleships, to make cars, and we're still, what a week when we've had earlier in the week. We're told that we're going to be at war with Russia within 20 years by NATO predicting that. The instability with China, and yet we're saying that we're going to rely on others in an increasingly unstable world. I don't think that means we shouldn't go to net zero, but we need to do it sensibly.
But this is what these three who I had on there, I don't know what they...
I just thought very rude laughing.
Well, they were. Well, they thought it was funny, but they seem to think it's funny because they couldn't get why someone like me is simply asking them a very straightforward question. And they were coming out with all this whatever. But the bottom line is that we need, as you said, and the steel, the word I was probably looking for is virgin steel.
Yes.
But that is the point, and neither of them mentioned it.
Not Richard Branson steel, but the steel, the first made steel.
But we need proper steel. We need to be able to make so that we can make ships and aircraft and all the other stuff. And if we don't have that, then we're in trouble.
We need to have our own quality virgin steel, and now we're relying on other countries. And look what's happening with the wars. We were told to be self-sufficient. But we're not listening.
Can you imagine in World War II? We'd have been gone within a week.
How many summits have they...
we got no Spitfires, no ships.
But, Nana, we've got, we've had the COP. We've had all these summits, the COPs, 28, Davos. I mean, they're all flying in their private jets. It's so hypocritical. And all this is like, I know Keir Starmer, your man, loves it. He loves Davos and so prefers it to Westminster, he said. Prefers it to Westminster. And let me tell you, they all fly in. This is all about, swigging champagne and having a food vol au vents and actually making money out of this. No, but they're making money because they're all there lobbying with their politicians.
I think it's really, really important on net zero. I think clearly we are decarbonising the economy, but if we're just doing it as a tick box exercise, it doesn't work. But if we do it as genuinely, obviously we're going to start using a lot less fossil fuels as time goes on, as we move to using fewer of them. But you've got to do it in a way that isn't just tick. We'll close the factory in Port Talbot and import it from China.
I'm afraid I'm not buying into any of it at all. No. I'm just simply not buying it. I think it's absolute rubbish. I think it's ridiculous and it's very foolhardy. Especially, do you remember the vaccine?
The way they're doing it is
Do you remember the COVID vaccine when suddenly other countries started to take the vaccines that we had bought from another country saying, no, we're going to keep them for ourselves? This is a very bad day for this country because you imagine if we are looking at down the barrel of potential world wars and we're saying, oh, we're not going to be making our own steel because of net zero, forget net zero.
Because the stuff
that's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years away. We're talking about 20 years' time.
Well, aren't we looking long term? We're looking at short. What are they doing? It's so disgusting, and I feel really sorry.
And actually, of course, one of the things you need steel for is some of the energy of the future, because to build things like wind turbines, you need steel.
Exactly.
Well, exactly, and they only last about 50 or 15.
But even if I'm in favour of building wind turbines offshore, but you need the steel to do it.
Well, listen,
I've got to go. Listen, I've got to get the Great British Voices on because there's nothing without them. So let's get our Great British Voices on. Their opportunity to be on the show and tell me what they think about the topics we're discussing. Full review, Miranda Richardson, not the Miranda Richardson, Miranda Richardson from Northamptonshire. She's our Miranda Richardson. Miranda, what do you think?
Afternoon, Nana. How are you?
Good.
Oh, I'm with you. Net zero. What an absolute load of old took. I'm so sorry. It's just money for old rope now. People are making money out of net zero and are just pushing us back. Quite right. We need wind turbines. We need solar systems. We can't make any of that ourselves now. It's import. But don't worry, because we'll be at net zero. Except we won't actually achieve net zero because we're all forgetting about the 9 million cattle we have in this country that produce methane, which, funnily enough, they want methane blockers newspapers for. So let's go to the pharmaceutical companies. Pharmaceutical companies, who, guess what, are going to make money. It's just an absolute crock, and we need to stop.
Well, they
we
want
need
us to be
stop and look at
vegans.
what we produce.
They want us to be vegans. They want us to be vegans. That will solve those.
Yeah, but even that costs an awful lot more money to make. And
think of the methane. Think of the methane from a vegan diet. That's even worse. Let's go to Jonathan Jones in Cornwall. Jonathan.
Thanks, Nana. I agree with you 100%. I think the whole thing is in danger of turning into a giant hoax. And you know what? There's lots of things we can do. I'm an environmentalist. As you know, we grow the first tea in England. That's doing local things and cutting carbon in a sensible way. Loads of things people can do. But, you know, closing steel and losing out to competitive other countries and, you know, putting ourselves at risk. Madness.
Madness. Right, let's go to Alan Cook in London. Alan, you've got about 30 seconds.
Oh, hi there, Nana. Well, I think it's pure lunacy. It's a complete act of economic suicide and self-harm.
It's true.
It is. I'll give you a quick analogy. Imagine if Putin suddenly said, let's disarm, let's, you know, de-weaponize the planet. But he says, you do it first. You get rid of your weapons and stop building them. But we'll keep building them for 20 years and keep all of ours. You wouldn't do that. It's insane. That's what we're doing in China and India, building hundreds and hundreds of coal-powered power stations.
Let's go to Brian Dugan. Yeah, you
on us.
Yeah, Brian Dugan, what do you think? You going to say something different?
Hi, Nana.
Hi.
Hi, Nana. I wouldn't worry about who was laughing at you earlier because the scientists didn't seem to be able to agree on the science in any case. Where have you heard that one before? But look, I think it was Theresa May who actually put into law that by 2050 we were heading towards net zero. But as you quite rightly pointed out, where is the infrastructure being built around that will be realised? And so nothing seems to be aligned on this. And we need to get it aligned very, very quickly if 2050 remains a realistic target for net zero.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much. Brilliant voices as usual. Jonathan Jones, Brian Dugan, Alan McLeary. Oh, Alan wasn't there. What am I saying? It's Alan Cook and also Miranda Richardson. Thank you very much. There's the Great British Voices. What do you think? Right. Well, I could move on to a story that caught my eye, but I'm actually going to move on to the quiz now. So it's time now for the quickfire quiz. The part of the show where I test my panel with some of the news stories that are hitting the headlines right now. Joining me is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Your buzzer, please. And also Labour advisor Matthew Laza. Your buzzer. Fabulous. And please play along at home. Question 1. What is the name of the storm that is forecast to hit the UK? Is it A, Isla? Is it B, Iona? Or is it C, Aisha?
It was me. You can't pretend it wasn't.
You didn't. I haven't finished talking. Lizzie Cundy. Lizzie Cundy.
C.
It's C. What do you think?
It is C.
Aisha. C. Is it C, Aisha?
I'm
the
on
answer
strike.
is C, Aisha. You got to wait till I finish.
OK. I did.
1-0 to Lizzie Cundy. Yes, the Met Office issued the amber warnings for wind in northern and western England, Wales, Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland from Sunday to Monday. Question 2. Closest answer wins. A team in the French league travelled over 8,000 miles to lose their cup tie. But what was the score? Lizzie Cundy.
4-0.
4-0. 12-0. 12-0. Close answer wins. The answer is 12-0.
Well done. You
got the sports question right.
How did you get the sports question?
Martinique football team lost 12-0 to Lille in the French Cup. Wow. Question 3. True or false? Dog owners in Italy are required to provide a sample of their DNA, their pet's DNA, in an attempt to address the issue of dog waste. Lizzie Cundy.
True.
False. False. The answer is it's true. It's actually true. Yes, the government of Bolzano city in Italy is setting up a database of almost 40,000 dogs in the area. It's 2-1 so far. All right, question 4. Prince Harry has dropped his libel case against the Daily Mail, but how much might the legal fees amount to? Is it A, I haven't finished. I started, so I'll finish. A, 750k, B, 755, or C, 745? Matthew Laza.
A, 750.
2-2. This is the decider. Please play along at home. It is £750,000. Question 5. Which tea brand is the latest victim of shrinkflation? Is it A, PG Tips, B, Tetley, or C, Yorkshire tea? Lizzie Cundy.
C, Yorkshire.
A, PG Tips.
A, PG Tips. The answer is PG tips. Even though you both pressed it ahead.
Well done.
Well, she got the answer.
No, but I have to say, I did have I love Yorkshire tea, and I did thought they looked rather small. Probably only my glasses.
Officially, it's PG tips.
Well, listen, the score's on the door. 3-2. Matthew Laza is the winner. Hopefully you do well at home. Winner. Well, listen, on today's show, I've been asking, should asylum seekers be allowed to work? Well, let's see. According to our Twitter poll, 39.8% of you say yes, 60.2% of you say no. So it wasn't a full clean sweep as I expected. So well done, you. Well, I've got to say, huge thank you to my fabulous pal.
Thank you so much.
Broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nana.
And also Matthew Laza. Look at his face.
He's so happy.
I was waiting for the la.
He's
It's
so
a pleasure.
happy.
It's a pleasure. I am very happy to one for once.
Thank you very much, Matthew.
Always lovely to be with you.
And as ever, a huge thank you to you at home for your company. I look forward to talking to you tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Joining me, Christine Hamilton and, of course, Danny Kelly. Stay tuned. We've got the weather on the way, but don't forget you can catch up on YouTube, or why not go and download the GB News app. It's completely free. Take care and enjoy your evening.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News weather. We've got Storm Isha on the way, particularly through Sunday evening, overnight into Monday morning, damaging gusts of wind, some large waves around the coast, some heavy rain too. It's unsettled over the next 24 hours and very unsettled Sunday into Monday as that storm moves through, and then it remains unsettled into next week too. Outbreaks of heavy rain already pushing in this evening across western parts of the UK. Some hail mixed in there too. Very strong and gusty winds, gales around the coast, but starting to ease a little during the early hours with some clear spells developing, but also some blustery showers too. Temperatures, well, generally frost-free, which we haven't seen for a while, 4 to 6 Celsius across many areas. A mixed start to Sunday morning, some bright spells, the best of these across northeast Scotland, also central southern parts of England, but then Storm Isha moves in during the latter part of the morning through the afternoon, bringing outbreaks of heavy rain, very strong winds developing, particularly as we head into the evening time and overnight, 60, 70, locally 80 miles an hour. Met Office amber warnings come in force for Sunday evening. The afternoon temperatures above average for the time of year, but given the strengthening winds, it will feel cooler than this. Blustery, unsettled start to Monday, some disruption to the morning commute. Warnings in force across the board for those strong winds. It remains unsettled over the coming week with further heavy rain as we head towards Tuesday and into Wednesday.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debate.